but I'm still standing here, stronger than before. When
Jody Marshall thought he had planned the perfect revenge. He wanted his ex-girlfriend Regina standing on that stage, 7 months pregnant with his child, singing love songs while he married someone else. He wanted everyone in that luxury ballroom to see how far he'd climbed and how far she'd fallen. He wanted her broken, desperate, and humiliated in front of 300 witnesses. But Jody made one critical mistake. He underestimated Regina. Because the song she chose that November afternoon didn't just expose his secrets. It detonated them like a bomb in the middle of his carefully constructed lie, turned his dream wedding into a nightmare, and set off a chain reaction that would destroy everything he'd built. And it was all caught on camera. This is the story of how one woman's courage, one song, and 5 minutes of truth changed everything. But before we get to that wedding, before we get to the moment that broke the internet and sparked a national conversation, we need to understand how we got here. We need to understand who these people really were behind the Instagram filters and the designer clothes. We need to understand the lies, the betrayal, and the secrets that led to the most dramatic wedding disaster in modern history. So let me take you back to where this all began, in a city where ambition mattered more than authenticity, where image was everything, and where one man's cruelty would finally catch up with him in the most public way imaginable. The questions everyone wants answered are these. What kind of man forces his pregnant ex-wife to sing at his wedding? What kind of woman accepts that job? Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll know the answers. You'll understand why Regina did what she did. You'll see how Jody's carefully constructed world came crashing down, and you'll witness the moment when truth became more powerful than money, status, or revenge. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start at the beginning, 18 months before that wedding, when Regina Parker first met Jody Marshall at a charity fundraiser in downtown Chicago. She was 26 years old, performing as part of the entertainment for the evening. He was 29, already successful, already wealthy, already on his way to becoming the man everyone wanted to know. Regina stood backstage that night, her heart pounding with the familiar pre-performance anxiety she always felt. She wore a simple black dress that she'd borrowed from her roommate Kim because she couldn't afford anything new. Her entire life savings at that moment was $742, barely enough to cover next month's rent on the tiny studio apartment she shared in a neighborhood where sirens wailed every night. But when Regina sang, none of that mattered. Her voice had a quality that transcended her circumstances, a raw emotional power that made people stop mid-conversation and listen. That night, she performed 3 songs for the wealthy crowd, classic jazz standards that filled the elegant hotel ballroom with warmth and soul. Jody Marshall noticed her immediately. He stood near the bar with his business partner Adam, both men in custom-tailored suits that cost more than Regina made in 3 months. Jody watched her with the kind of focused intensity he usually reserved for business deals. He saw something in Regina that night, though what he saw would turn out to be very different from what she hoped. After her performance, Jody approached her with a champagne flute in each hand and his most charming smile. That smile had opened doors for him throughout his life. It made people trust him, like him, want to be near him. Regina, standing alone near the stage and carefully packing her sheet music, looked up to find this handsome, confident man offering her expensive champagne. "You have an incredible voice," Jody said, his eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. I'm Jody Marshall. I run Marshall Tech Solutions downtown. Regina took the champagne with slightly trembling hands. She'd never held a glass that expensive before. Thank you. I'm Regina Parker. I know who you are, Jody said, moving closer. I asked the event coordinator about you. She said you're one of the most talented singers in Chicago, even though you're still building your career. Regina felt herself blushing. Compliments from wealthy, successful men didn't happen to girls like her. Girls who grew up in Southside Chicago with a single mother who cleaned houses for a living. Girls who'd worked 3 jobs to put themselves through community college. Girls whose biggest dream was simply to make music and pay their bills without constantly drowning in debt. That's very kind, Regina said, trying to sound confident even though her heart was racing. Are you interested in music? I'm interested in talent, Jody replied smoothly. And authenticity. You have both. Most people in this room are here because they want to be seen, want to network, want to climb the social ladder. But you're here because you love what you do. That's rare. He wasn't wrong, and Regina appreciated that he'd noticed. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known that night, was that Jody's appreciation had nothing to do with respecting her authenticity. He was simply good at reading people, at saying exactly what they wanted to hear, at making them feel special and seen. It was a skill he'd honed over years of climbing from his middle-class background to his current position as a rising tech entrepreneur. They talked for over an hour that night. Jody asked about her music, her dreams, her life. He listened with what seemed like genuine interest. He made her laugh. He made her feel like she mattered, like her struggles and her dreams were important to someone beyond herself and her small circle of friends. By the end of the evening, Jody had Regina's phone number and a promise from her to have dinner with him the following weekend. Regina floated home that night on a cloud of possibility. Maybe her luck was finally changing. Maybe this was the beginning of something beautiful. Her roommate Kim, a paralegal who'd been Regina's best friend since high school, was waiting up when Regina got home to their cramped studio. Kim sat cross-legged on her mattress, eating ramen noodles and watching reality TV on her laptop. "How was the gig?" Kim asked, looking up with tired eyes. She'd worked a 12-hour shift and looked exhausted. "Amazing," Regina said, unable to contain her excitement. "I met someone. His name is Jody Marshall. He's successful, charming, and Kim, he actually listened to me. Like really listened. He wants to take me to dinner." Kim's expression shifted to concern. She'd seen Regina get excited about men before, and it usually ended in disappointment. "Just be careful, Reggie. Rich guys don't usually have serious intentions with girls like us." "Girls like us?" Regina felt defensive. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I don't mean it in a bad way," Kim said gently. "I just mean we're not from their world. We don't have the connections, the money, the background. Sometimes guys like that are just looking for something fun and temporary before they settle down with someone from their own social circle." Regina shook her head, refusing to let Kim's worry dampen her mood. "Not every successful man is shallow, Kim. Maybe Jody's different. Maybe he actually sees me for who I am." Kim didn't argue further. She just gave Regina a hug and said, "I hope you're right. I really do. You deserve someone amazing." That weekend, Jody took Regina to the most expensive restaurant she'd ever been to. The kind of place where the menu didn't list prices and the waiters wore tuxedos. Regina felt completely out of place in her nicest dress, which was still clearly from a discount store. But Jody made her feel comfortable, complimented her, ordered for both of them with confidence and expertise. Over the next 3 months, Jody swept Regina into a whirlwind romance. Expensive dinners, weekend trips to Michigan's wine country, tickets to sold-out concerts. He introduced her to his world slowly, carefully, making her feel like she belonged there. He bought her clothes so she'd feel comfortable at the events they attended together. He paid for her to get her hair done professionally before important dinners with his business associates. At the time, Regina thought Jody was being generous and thoughtful. She didn't recognize that he was molding her, shaping her into the version of herself that would fit into his life. She didn't see that his gifts came with invisible strings attached, expectations she didn't fully understand. Regina's friend Kim continued to express concerns. "He's changing you, Reggie," Kim said one night when Regina came home from another expensive date. "You're dressing differently, talking differently. You've even started straightening your hair instead of wearing your natural curls." "I'm just adapting," Regina defended herself. "Is that so wrong?" "Jody's world is different from ours. If I want to be part of it, I need to fit in." "But should you have to change who you are to fit into someone's world?" Kim asked quietly. "What about him changing to fit into yours? Has he ever come to Southside? Has he ever met your mom? Has he shown any interest in your actual life?" Regina didn't have good answers to those questions. The truth was, Jody had never visited her neighborhood, never met her mother who still cleaned houses at age 57, never attended any of her small gigs at coffee shops or local bars. Their relationship existed entirely in his world, on his terms. But Regina pushed those concerns aside because being with Jody made her feel like she'd finally escaped the constant financial stress that had defined her entire life. For the first time ever, she didn't wake up each morning calculating whether she could afford groceries. She didn't panic when unexpected expenses came up. Jody took care of everything, and Regina convinced herself that his generosity was love. 6 months into their relationship, Regina discovered she was pregnant. She found out on a Tuesday morning in her tiny bathroom, staring at 2 pink lines on a drugstore pregnancy test, while Kim knocked on the door, asking if she was okay. Regina's hands shook as she opened the door and showed Kim the test. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, tears already forming in her eyes. Kim pulled her into a tight hug. "What are you going to do? Have you told Jody?" "Not yet," Regina said, her mind racing with possibilities and fears. "I need to figure out how to tell him." Deep in her heart, Regina felt scared, but she also felt something else: hope. She imagined Jody's face when she told him, imagined him sweeping her into his arms, telling her they'd figure it out together. Maybe they'd even get married. Maybe this baby would be the thing that finally made their relationship official, permanent, real. But Regina didn't know what Kim suspected, what would later become painfully clear. Jody Marshall had never intended for this relationship to be permanent. Regina was a phase, an experience, a temporary escape from the pressures of his business world. She was never meant to be his future. She was just his present, and that present was about to end in the cruelest way imaginable. Regina decided to tell Jody over dinner at his penthouse apartment downtown. The apartment had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, granite countertops, and furniture that cost more than Regina's annual income. Jody had cooked for her, which was rare. He'd made salmon with asparagus and opened a bottle of wine that he said cost $300. Regina barely touched her food. Her stomach churned with nervous energy. Finally, after Jody finished talking about some big deal his company was closing, Regina took a deep breath and said the words that would change everything. "Jody, I'm pregnant." The silence that followed those 3 words felt endless. Jody's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. His expression, which had been relaxed and happy moments before, went completely blank. He slowly set down his fork and stared at Regina like she'd just told him she'd committed a crime. "You're what?" His voice was cold, empty of emotion. "I'm pregnant," Regina repeated, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "About 6 weeks along. I know this wasn't planned, but Jody, we can figure this out together. I know you'll be an amazing father." Jody stood up from the table so abruptly his chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. He walked to the windows, his back to Regina, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. The silence stretched for so long that Regina felt her heart beginning to crack. This wasn't the reaction she'd imagined. This wasn't joy or even nervous acceptance. This was something else entirely. Something that felt like rejection taking shape in the expensive air of his penthouse. Finally, Jody turned around. When Regina saw his face, she barely recognized him. The warmth, the charm, the man who'd made her feel special for 6 months. All of that was gone. In its place was someone cold, calculating, and cruel. "This is a problem," Jody said flatly. Those 4 words landed like stones in Regina's chest. Not, "we'll figure it out," or "let's talk about this." Just, "this is a problem." "A problem?" Regina's voice came out small and broken. "Yes, Regina. A problem." Jody ran his hand through his perfectly styled hair, a gesture of frustration and annoyance. "I'm at a critical point in my career. I'm about to close a $50 million deal. I'm being featured in Chicago Business Magazine next month. My company is growing exponentially. I cannot have the complication of an unplanned pregnancy right now." Regina felt tears beginning to stream down her face. "Complication? Jody, this is our baby, your child." "A child I'm not ready for," Jody said, his voice sharp. "Look, Regina, you're a sweet girl. You have a beautiful voice. These past few months have been fun. But you have to understand, this was never meant to be permanent." Each word felt like a knife. Regina stood up from the table, her legs shaky, her whole body trembling. "What are you saying?" Jody sighed as if she were being deliberately difficult. "I'm saying that I don't see a future for us. You're not, Regina, you have to understand. I need someone who fits into my world. Someone from the right background, with the right connections, who understands how to navigate the social circles I need to be part of. You're a singer from South Side. That's fine for a relationship, for fun. But for marriage, for building a family, I need someone different." The cruelty of his honesty knocked the breath from Regina's lungs. She'd known, on some level, that Jody came from a different world. But she'd believed that love could bridge that gap. She'd believed that what they had was real. She'd been wrong. "So what are you saying?" Regina asked through her tears. "That you're breaking up with me because I'm not good enough for you?" "I'm saying that we want different things," Jody said, as if that made his rejection less brutal. "And I'm willing to help you handle this situation. Financially, I mean. I'll pay for whatever you need to do. Or if you decide to keep it, I'll send child support. But Regina, I won't be involved. I can't be." "Can't or won't?" Regina asked, finding a spark of anger beneath her devastation. "Both," Jody said coldly. Then he walked to his desk, pulled out his checkbook, and wrote a check. He brought it to Regina and held it out. "Here's $20,000. That should cover any immediate expenses and help you get settled." Regina looked at the check, then at Jody's face. This man she'd thought she loved, this man whose child she carried, was trying to pay her to disappear from his life. The humiliation, the heartbreak, the sheer cruelty of it all crashed over her like a wave. She wanted to rip up the check and throw it in his face. She wanted to scream at him, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain he was causing her. But then reality intruded. Regina had $742 to her name. She was pregnant. She needed that money to survive, so she took the check, hating herself for it, hating him more. "You're not a good person, Jody," she said quietly. "Maybe not," he replied, unmoved. "But I'm honest about who I am. I never promised you forever, Regina. You just assumed." That might have been the cruelest part, because in some ways, he was right. Jody had never explicitly promised her marriage or permanence. He'd simply let her believe it was possible, let her fall in love, let her build a future in her mind that he'd never intended to share. Regina left his penthouse that night carrying his child and his money, but none of his love. She cried the entire train ride home to her studio apartment. When she walked in, Kim took one look at her face and knew everything. "He broke up with you," Kim said, not a question but a statement. "He said I'm not good enough for his world." Regina sobbed into Kim's shoulder. "He said this baby is a problem he doesn't want to deal with." Kim held her friend while she cried, and in that moment, Kim made a silent vow. Jody Marshall would regret what he'd done. She didn't know how or when, but men like him always got what they deserved eventually. The universe had a way of balancing the scales. What neither Regina nor Kim knew that night was that Jody's cruelty was just beginning. The worst was still to come, waiting 11 months in the future, hidden inside a wedding invitation that would arrive in Regina's mailbox and change everything forever. But I'll be sure to tell you about that later in the story. For now, Regina was simply a heartbroken woman trying to figure out how she would survive as a single mother in a city that didn't care about her struggles. For now, she had no idea that her pain would eventually transform into power, that her humiliation would become her strength, and that the man who'd thrown her away like garbage would one day beg for her mercy. Justice was coming for Jody Marshall. It was just taking its time. Regina's life had always been about survival. Long before she met Jody Marshall, long before she found herself pregnant and abandoned in a city that felt too big and too cold, Regina had been fighting just to keep her head above water. Understanding where she came from, the strength that had been forged in her through years of hardship, helps explain how she would eventually find the courage to stand up to the man who'd broken her heart in front of 300 witnesses. Regina grew up in Southside Chicago with her mother, Diane Parker, in a 2-bedroom apartment that always smelled like pine sol and determination. Diane had been a single mother since Regina was 3 years old, after Regina's father, Marcus, had left them for another woman and never looked back. Marcus sent birthday cards for the first few years, then those stopped too. Eventually, he became nothing more than a name Regina wrote on school forms under father, and a dull ache of abandonment she carried in her chest. Diane worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat. She cleaned houses during the day, worked as a cashier at a grocery store in the evenings, and did laundry services for a local hotel on weekends. Regina rarely saw her mother without exhaustion etched into her face, but Diane never complained. She simply worked, prayed, and made sure Regina had what she needed. "Education is your way out, baby," Diane would tell Regina every morning before school. "You study hard, you get yourself somewhere better than here. Don't end up like me, breaking your back for pennies." But Diane had one gift she'd passed to her daughter beyond work ethic and determination: music. On Sunday mornings, Diane sang in the church choir, and her voice was pure magic, rich and soulful, filled with the kind of emotion that came from a life of hard-earned faith. Regina would sit in the church pews, watching her mother sing, feeling the way the entire congregation seemed to lean toward that voice like flowers toward sunlight. "Mama, you should be famous," young Regina would say after church. Diane would laugh, a sound that was somehow both bitter and warm. "Famous doesn't pay the rent, sweetheart. And besides, I had you to raise. That was more important than any dream." Regina internalized that lesson. Dreams were luxuries. Survival was what mattered. But she also inherited her mother's voice. And from the age of 6, Regina sang too. In church, in school talent shows, anywhere people would listen. Music was the one place where Regina felt like she could be more than just another poor kid from Southside. When she sang, she was powerful. She was valued. She was seen. By high school, Regina had developed into a stunning vocalist with a range that moved between gospel, jazz, and soul with effortless grace. Her music teacher, Mrs. Chen, pulled her aside during junior year with news that could change everything. "Regina, I've submitted your audition tapes to several music schools," Mrs. Chen said, her eyes bright with excitement. "Full-ride scholarships. With your talent, you could get into Berkeley, Juilliard, any of the top programs in the country." Regina's heart soared for exactly 10 seconds before reality crashed back in. "I can't leave Chicago, Mrs. Chen. My mom needs help with bills. Who's going to help her if I leave?" Mrs. Chen's face fell. "Regina, you can't sacrifice your future for—" "My mom sacrificed everything for me," Regina interrupted, her voice firm despite being only 16. "I'm not abandoning her. I'll find another way to study music." So instead of Berkeley or Juilliard, Regina enrolled in community college while working 2 part-time jobs. She studied music theory between shifts at a coffee shop and as a server at a family restaurant. She performed at open mic nights and small venues across Chicago, slowly building a modest reputation as a talented local singer. The money was never enough, but Regina was used to that. She'd learned long ago how to stretch $20 into a week's worth of groceries, how to fix her own clothes instead of buying new ones, how to sacrifice and survive. That's where Kim came into her life. Kim Rodriguez had grown up 2 blocks from Regina, with a similarly struggling single mother and big dreams that constantly collided with harsh realities. The two became inseparable friends in high school and decided to room together after graduation to save money. Their tiny studio apartment in a rough neighborhood became their sanctuary, a place where they could be themselves without pretending to be anything more than 2 young women trying to build something from nothing. Kim had wanted to be a lawyer, but law school was too expensive. So she became a paralegal instead, working grueling hours at a downtown firm where she did most of the work, while lawyers with fancy degrees took all the credit. Like Regina, Kim understood that life wasn't fair, that hard work didn't always lead to success, and that sometimes you had to accept less than your dreams just to survive. "We're going to make it," Kim would say on their hardest days, when the rent was overdue and their refrigerator was empty except for condiments and tap water. "Maybe not the way we planned, but we're going to make it." And they were making it, barely, when Regina met Jody Marshall at that charity fundraiser. Regina, who'd never had a serious boyfriend because she was always too busy working and struggling to have time for romance. Regina, who'd never been treated to an expensive dinner or given designer clothes or told she was beautiful by a man who seemed to have the whole world at his fingertips. Jody's attention felt like salvation. It felt like all those years of struggling were finally paying off. Like maybe good things really did happen to people who worked hard and stayed hopeful. Kim saw through it, but Regina didn't want to see through it. She wanted to believe. She needed to believe. So when Jody broke up with her that terrible night in his penthouse, it wasn't just a breakup. It was the confirmation of every fear Regina had ever carried. That she wasn't good enough. That girls from Southside didn't get fairy tale endings. That no matter how hard she worked or how talented she was, she would always be seen as less than by people who'd been born with money and privilege. The weeks after the breakup were the darkest of Regina's life. She cashed Jody's $20,000 check, and the money felt like poison in her bank account. Blood money, guilt money, the price tag Jody had placed on their relationship and their child. Regina knew she should be grateful for the financial cushion. $20,000 was more money than she'd ever had at once. It meant she could afford prenatal care, could take some time off work after the baby was born, could buy the things a new baby needed. But it also meant that Jody had reduced their entire relationship, their child, everything they'd shared, to a dollar amount. And that hurt more than anything. Regina's mother came to visit when Regina was 3 months pregnant, her belly just starting to show. Diane took one look at her daughter's hollow eyes and thin frame and knew something was terribly wrong. "Where is he?" Diane asked, sitting on the worn couch in Regina's studio apartment while Kim made tea in the tiny kitchen. "Where's the father?" "Gone," Regina said simply, unable to meet her mother's eyes. "He doesn't want anything to do with the baby." Diane was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached over and took Regina's hand. "Baby, I know that hurts. I know it feels like the end of the world. But let me tell you something I learned when your daddy left us. A man who walks away from his child is doing you a favor." Regina looked up, surprised. "A favor?" "Yes," Diane said firmly. "Because if he stayed, he'd poison your life and that baby's life with his resentment and his selfishness. He'd make you both miserable. By leaving, he's giving you a chance to build something clean and good without his toxicity. You don't need him, Regina. You never did." "But how am I going to do this alone?" Regina's voice broke. "I'm barely surviving as it is. The same way I did it," Diane said, squeezing her daughter's hand. "One day at a time, one choice at a time. And baby, you're not alone. You have me, you have Kim, you have yourself, and Regina, you're stronger than you know. You've always been strong." Kim brought over 3 cups of tea and sat down with them. "Plus, I'm going to be the best aunt any kid ever had. This baby's going to have so much love. They won't even notice there's no father." Regina tried to smile, tried to feel the hope her mother and best friend were offering. But the truth was, she felt broken, humiliated, used. And beneath all that pain was a simmering anger she didn't quite know what to do with yet. The pregnancy progressed. Regina's belly grew. She continued performing at small venues, though she had to turn down gigs that required her to stand for too long or sing too many hours. The money got tighter. The $20,000 was dwindling faster than she'd hoped, eaten up by medical bills, rent, food, and all the things a baby needed. By her 7th month, Regina was starting to panic again. She'd managed to save some money, but it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. She needed more work, better paying gigs, something that would give her a cushion for when the baby came, and she couldn't perform for a while. That's when the phone call came. Regina was folding tiny baby clothes she'd bought at a second-hand store, imagining the little person who would soon wear them when her phone rang with an unknown number. "Hello? Is this Regina Parker, the vocalist?" a woman's voice asked, professional and crisp. "Yes, this is she." "Wonderful. My name is Patricia Monroe. I'm a high-end event planner in Chicago. I specialize in luxury weddings and corporate events. I'm calling because I have a job opportunity that might interest you." Regina's heart rate picked up. High-end events meant better pay. "I'm listening." "I'm organizing a wedding at the Crystal Terrace on Lakeshore Drive. It's quite the affair. 300 guests, live orchestra, celebrity chef. The couple specifically requested a female vocalist with raw emotional talent for several songs during the ceremony and reception. Your demo recordings came highly recommended. The pay would be $5,000 for the evening." Regina nearly dropped the baby onesie she was holding. $5,000. That was more than she usually made in 4 months of small gigs combined. That was the financial lifeline she desperately needed. Wow, that's very generous," Regina managed to say. "When is the wedding?" "November 15th. Does that work for your schedule?" Regina calculated quickly. She'd be about 7.5 months pregnant by then. Uncomfortable, but still able to perform. "Yes, I'm available." "Excellent. I'll email you all the details, venue information, dress code, song selections. Please review everything and get back to me with your acceptance by end of business tomorrow." "Thank you so much," Regina said, feeling the first stirring of hope she'd felt in months. "I really appreciate this opportunity." After Patricia hung up, Regina immediately called Kim at work. "Kim, you're not going to believe this. I just got offered a $5,000 gig. $5,000 for one evening. This could change everything." "That's amazing, Reggie." Kim's excitement was palpable even through the phone. "When is it?" "November 15th. Some luxury wedding on Lakeshore Drive." "Did you get the couple's names?" "Not yet. She's emailing details. I'll look tonight." That evening, Regina opened her laptop with eager anticipation. She pulled up Patricia's email and began reading through the attached contract and event details. Her eyes scanned past the venue information, the timing, the dress code requirements. Then she reached the section listing the couple's names. Wedding Performance Contract Event. The marriage celebration of Mr. Jody Marshall and Miss Beauty Chen. Date: November 15th. Venue: Crystal Terrace, Lakeshore Drive. Regina's entire body went cold. She read the names again. Then again. Then one more time, certain she must be mistaken. But there it was, clear as day. Jody Marshall, the father of her unborn child. The man who'd abandoned her because she wasn't good enough for his world. He was getting married. And somehow, impossibly, she'd been hired to sing at his wedding. Regina slammed her laptop shut and jumped up from her chair so violently that it tipped backward and crashed to the floor. Her hands trembled. Her breathing came in short, painful gasps. The baby kicked inside her belly as if sensing her distress. "No," Regina whispered to herself, pacing back and forth in her small living room. No. This can't be happening." She opened the laptop again, hands shaking so badly she could barely control them. She scrolled through the rest of the email. There, buried in the song selection notes, was a line that made her blood run ice cold. The groom specifically requested a female vocalist with raw emotional talent. He mentioned this quality was particularly important to him. Raw emotional talent. Those were the exact words Jody had used to describe Regina's singing voice during their relationship. He knew. Jody knew she was being hired. This wasn't a coincidence. This was intentional. This was Jody's way of twisting the knife one more time, of showing her and everyone else that he'd moved on to bigger and better things while she was still struggling, still desperate for money, still at his mercy. The cruelty of it made Regina feel physically sick. She ran to the bathroom and vomited, though whether from pregnancy nausea or from emotional devastation, she couldn't tell. When she looked up at the mirror, she saw a woman who looked tired and defeated. Her pregnancy had rounded out her face. Her hair, which she hadn't been able to afford to get done professionally, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked nothing like the woman in designer clothes that Jody had briefly tried to mold her into. She looked like exactly what Jody had called her. Not good enough for his world. Regina's phone buzzed. Another email from Patricia. Just following up to confirm you received the contract details. Please let me know your acceptance by tomorrow. Looking forward to working with you. Regina stared at the screen for a long time. Every instinct screamed at her to decline this job, to tell Patricia exactly where Jody Marshall could shove his $5,000. She still had some dignity left. She didn't have to stand on a stage, 7 months pregnant with his child, watching him marry someone else. She didn't have to give him that satisfaction. But then she looked around her tiny apartment, at the second-hand baby clothes, at the bills stacked on her small table, at her bank account that was once again dwindling toward empty, at the reality that in 2 months, she'd have a baby who needed diapers, formula, a crib, clothes, and a mother who could provide all of those things. Could she really afford dignity? Could she really turn down $5,000 just to protect her pride? What about her baby? What about survival? Regina sat down heavily on her couch and did something she hadn't done in years. She prayed. Not the ritualistic prayers from church, but a raw, honest conversation with God or the universe or whatever force might be listening. I don't know what to do, she whispered into the empty apartment. I feel like I'm trapped between pride and survival, between what's right and what's necessary. Give me a sign. Help me know what to choose. But no sign came. No divine wisdom descended to make the choice easy. There was just Regina, alone with an impossible decision, and a baby moving inside her belly depending on her to choose wisely. That's when Regina realized something important. This wasn't just about her anymore. Every choice she made now affected another human being. Her child deserved a mother who did whatever was necessary to provide, even if it meant swallowing her pride and singing at the wedding of the man who'd broken her heart. With tears streaming down her face, Regina opened her laptop and typed a response to Patricia Monroe. Dear Patricia, thank you for this opportunity. I accept the job. I will perform at the wedding on November 15th. Please send the final contract. Sincerely, Regina Parker. She hit send before she could change her mind. It was done. In just over a month, she would stand on a stage at Jody's wedding. The thought terrified her, but it also ignited something else deep inside her chest. A small flame of anger that whispered, if Jody thinks he can humiliate me, he's wrong. If he thinks I'll stand there broken and defeated, he doesn't know me at all. Kim came home later that night to find Regina still sitting at her laptop, staring at the contract she'd accepted. What's wrong? Kim asked, immediately sensing something off. Regina told her everything, about the job offer, the money, and the horrifying discovery that it was Jody's wedding. When she finished, Kim was silent for a long moment. Then Kim said something unexpected. You should do it." Regina looked at her friend in shock. "What? Kim, how can you say that?" "Because," Kim said, sitting down beside Regina and taking her hand, "Jody thinks he has power over you. He thinks hiring you for his wedding proves he's moved on while you're still stuck. He wants you to feel small. But what if you take his trap and turn it into your triumph?" "I don't understand." "What if you go to that wedding not as Jody's victim, but as Regina Parker, a talented professional doing a job? What if you show up with your head held high, sing beautifully, collect your $5,000, and walk out knowing that you survived? He wanted to break you, but you're unbreakable. Show him that." Regina considered her friend's words. "What if I can't do it? What if I fall apart?" "Then you'll have me there," Kim said firmly. "I'll be right there with you every step. And Regina, listen to me. You're one of the strongest people I know. You raised yourself while your mama worked 3 jobs. You put yourself through school. You've survived poverty, abandonment, heartbreak, and pregnancy all alone. Singing at one wedding. That's nothing compared to what you've already survived." Those words planted a seed in Regina's heart. A seed that would slowly grow into determination, then into courage, and finally into the strength she'd need to do what came next. But even Kim didn't know what Regina was starting to plan in the quiet corners of her mind. Even Regina didn't fully know yet. It was just a whisper, a thought, a possibility forming like a storm cloud on the horizon. "What if I don't sing his love songs?" Regina thought. "What if I sing the truth instead?" The idea was dangerous, potentially disastrous, and possibly the bravest thing Regina had ever considered. But it was also justice. Real, raw, undeniable justice. And as Regina sat there in her tiny apartment with her pregnant belly and her broken heart, she realized something important. She was tired of being the victim in Jody Marshall's story. It was time to become the author of her own narrative. The wedding was 6 weeks away. Regina had time to prepare, time to plan, time to write a song that would change everything. Justice was coming for Jody Marshall, and it was going to arrive in Regina Parker's voice, in front of 300 witnesses, at the exact moment when he thought he was untouchable. The 6 weeks between accepting the job and the actual wedding passed both too slowly and too quickly for Regina. During the day, time crawled as she dealt with the increasing discomforts of late pregnancy. Swollen ankles, back pain, the constant need to pee. But at night, when she sat at the old keyboard her mother had given her years ago, time seemed to accelerate. The wedding was approaching like a train she couldn't stop, and Regina still hadn't decided whether she was going to step onto the tracks or out of the way. What Regina was certain about was this: she needed a weapon. Not a physical one, but something equally powerful: words, music, truth. She needed a song that could expose everything Jody had done without her having to say a single word directly. A song that would make everyone in that ballroom understand exactly what kind of man was standing at the altar. Late at night, while Kim slept on their shared pull-out couch, Regina worked on composing. The melody came first, hauntingly beautiful and sad, built on a simple chord progression that felt both familiar and fresh. Then came the lyrics, pouring out of her like water from a broken dam. Every line was born from genuine pain, from the nights she'd cried herself to sleep, from the moment Jody had handed her that check and told her she wasn't good enough for his world. The song she created was called "When Love Wasn't Enough." It told the story of a woman abandoned by a man who valued status over substance, money over meaning, image over integrity. It was honest, raw, and devastating, but it wasn't angry or vengeful. It was simply true. And truth, Regina was learning, had a power all its own. She practiced the song every day, refining the melody, perfecting the phrasing, making sure every word carried the emotional weight it needed to. Kim would listen and cry, which told Regina she was on the right track. If that song doesn't make every person in that wedding reconsider everything they know about Jody Marshall, Kim said, wiping her eyes, then they're not human. But Regina still hadn't decided if she would actually perform it. Patricia Monroe had sent her a list of traditional wedding songs to prepare. At Last by Etta James, Can't Help Falling in Love by Elvis, The Way You Look Tonight by Frank Sinatra. Safe songs, romantic songs, songs that would make the guests smile and the bride cry happy tears, while Jody looked on with satisfaction. Regina practiced those songs too, until she could sing them perfectly even while her mind was elsewhere. She had 2 complete set lists prepared now, the safe one and the dangerous one, and she wouldn't know which one she'd choose until the moment arrived. 3 days before the wedding, Regina had her final prenatal checkup. Her doctor, a kind older woman named Dr. Sarah Williams, examined her carefully and pronounced both Regina and the baby healthy. "You're at 30 weeks now," Dr. Williams said, helping Regina sit up on the examination table. "Everything looks good, but Regina, I want you to be careful about stress. Your blood pressure is slightly elevated, which is concerning this late in pregnancy." "I'm trying to stay calm," Regina said, though it was a lie. How could she be calm when she was about to walk into the most stressful situation of her life? "Are you still planning to perform at that event this weekend?" Dr. Williams asked, reviewing Regina's chart. "The wedding?" "Yes," Regina said. "I need the money." Dr. Williams looked at her with understanding and sympathy. She'd been Regina's doctor throughout the pregnancy and knew at least some of the story. "Just promise me you'll take breaks if you need them, drink plenty of water, and if you feel dizzy or have any contractions, you'll stop immediately." "I promise," Regina said, though she wondered if promises meant anything when you were planning to potentially detonate a bomb in the middle of someone's wedding. That evening, Kim took Regina shopping for the last few things she'd need. Patricia had provided a dress for Regina to wear, an elegant navy blue gown that accommodated her pregnant belly beautifully. But Regina needed shoes, needed to get her hair done, needed to look like she belonged in a luxury venue even though she felt like an imposter. As they walked through the shopping district, Kim suddenly stopped and grabbed Regina's arm. "Look," she said, pointing to a newsstand. There, on the cover of Chicago Business Magazine, was Jody Marshall. The headline read, "Tech Titan at 30, How Jody Marshall Built a $100 Million Empire." The photo showed Jody in a designer suit, standing in front of his company's glass headquarters, looking every inch the successful entrepreneur the article celebrated. Regina felt her stomach turn. Kim picked up the magazine and flipped to the article. "Listen to this," she said, reading aloud. "Marshall credits his success to unwavering focus and the courage to make hard decisions. When asked about work-life balance, Marshall says he's finally found the right partner to build a future with. His fiancée, Beauty Chen, daughter of real estate mogul David Chen, shares his vision for success and legacy." "Stop," Regina said quietly. "I don't want to hear anymore." But Kim kept reading, her voice rising with indignation. "Marshall says the secret to happiness is surrounding yourself with people who elevate you, who understand your vision, who come from the same world you're building toward. Reggie, he's literally saying in a national magazine that he needs people from the right background, He's admitting exactly what he did to you. Regina took the magazine from Kim's hands and stared at Jody's photo. He looked so confident, so certain of his righteousness, so completely convinced that he'd made the right choices and that his success justified everything. What kind of person does that? Regina asked quietly. What kind of person abandons their pregnant girlfriend and then goes on magazine covers talking about finding the right partner without mentioning the child they threw away? A narcissist, Kim said bluntly. Someone who's so in love with their own image that they can't see the damage they cause to real human beings. Regina handed the magazine back to the vendor. She didn't want to buy it, didn't want to support anything that celebrated Jody's rise without mentioning his cruelty. "Let's go," she said. "I need to get my hair done." At the salon, Regina sat in the chair while a stylist worked on her natural curls, shaping them into something elegant and sophisticated. She watched herself in the mirror, seeing not the broken woman she'd been 6 months ago, but someone stronger, someone who'd survived, someone who was about to become a mother and who would do whatever was necessary to protect her child. "You look beautiful," the stylist said, finishing Regina's hair with a flourish. "Special occasion?" "You could say that," Regina replied, though she wondered if special was the right word for what was about to happen. The night before the wedding, Regina couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, one hand resting on her belly where the baby kicked and moved. "What do I do, little one?" she whispered. "Do I play it safe and sing their songs? Or do I tell the truth and risk everything?" The baby kicked again, hard, right under her ribs. Regina smiled despite herself. "You want me to be brave, don't you? You want your mama to be strong." At 3 a.m., Regina got up and went to her keyboard one more time. She played through When Love Wasn't Enough, from beginning to end, pouring every ounce of emotion into the performance. When she finished, tears were streaming down her face, but she also felt something else. Certainty. She was going to do it. She was going to sing her truth at Jody's wedding, and whatever consequences came from that choice, she would face them. Because staying silent, protecting Jody's lies one more time, would be a betrayal of herself and her child. And Regina Parker was done betraying herself to make men comfortable. Kim woke up and found Regina at the keyboard. Without saying a word, she came over and hugged her friend from behind, careful of Regina's pregnant belly. "You've decided, haven't you?" "Yes," Regina said. "I'm going to sing my song." "Good," Kim said fiercely. "And I'll be right there in the audience. If anyone tries to stop you, they'll have to go through me first." The morning of November 15th dawned cold and clear. Regina woke early, spent extra time in the bathroom dealing with pregnancy nausea, then carefully got dressed in the navy blue gown Patricia had provided. The dress fit perfectly, flowing gracefully over her rounded belly and making her look elegant and professional despite being 7.5 months pregnant. Kim helped Regina with her makeup and hair, and when they were done, Regina looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. She looked powerful. She looked like someone who belonged on that stage, someone who had every right to be there. "Remember," Kim said as they prepared to leave, "you're not doing this for revenge. You're doing it for truth, for yourself, for your baby, for every woman who's ever been abandoned and told she wasn't good enough." Regina nodded, storing those words in her heart like armor. The car Patricia had sent arrived at 2 p.m. to take Regina to the Crystal Terrace on Lakeshore Drive. The venue was breathtakingly beautiful, a glass-walled ballroom overlooking Lake Michigan with a view that seemed to stretch forever. Inside, the space had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. White roses and orchids covered every surface. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. White chairs arranged in perfect rows faced an altar decorated with more flowers than Regina had ever seen in one place. Everything was elegant, expensive, and perfect, just like Jody had always wanted. Patricia Monroe greeted Regina warmly in the preparation room. "You look absolutely beautiful. How are you feeling?" "Ready?" Regina said, and it was true. "Wonderful. Let me go over the schedule one more time. You'll perform at last as the bride walks down the aisle, then Can't Help Falling in Love during the signing of the marriage certificate. After the ceremony, you'll perform 3 more songs during the cocktail hour. Does that all sound good?" Regina nodded, not trusting herself to speak. In her bag, she had 2 folders of sheet music. One contained the songs Patricia had requested. The other contained When Love Wasn't Enough. She still wasn't sure which one she'd pull out when the moment came. At 4:30 p.m., guests began arriving. Regina peeked through the preparation room door and watched them file in. Rich people, all of them. Women in designer dresses that cost more than Regina's rent. Men in custom suits. Everyone air-kissed and networked and talked about their vacation homes and their latest investments. This was Jody's world. The world he'd told Regina she didn't belong in. Then Regina saw him. Jody walked into the ballroom with his best man, Adam, and Regina's breath caught in her throat. He looked exactly the same as he had 6 months ago. Handsome, confident, perfectly groomed. He laughed at something Adam said, looking relaxed and happy. He looked like a man with absolutely no regrets. Regina felt her hands ball into fists. How dare he be happy? How dare he stand there smiling and laughing while she carried his child and struggled to pay rent and wondered if she'd be homeless by the time the baby was born. Patricia knocked on the door. "Regina, it's time. Let's get you to your position." Regina's heart hammered as she walked to the small stage area near the altar. A pianist was already in position, and Regina handed him the sheet music for At Last. She would start with the safe song. She would see how things felt. She could always change her mind. But tucked in her other folder, visible only to her, was When Love Wasn't Enough, waiting like a loaded gun. The ballroom filled completely. 300 guests, all seated, all waiting. Regina saw Jody standing at the altar with Adam beside him, adjusting his tie and looking toward the doors where his bride would enter. He hadn't even glanced at Regina. To him, she was just the help, just the entertainment, just background music for his perfect day. That's when Regina saw her. Beauty Chen entered from a side door to check some last-minute details, and Regina understood immediately why Jody had chosen her. Beauty was stunning. Tall, slender, with perfect features and an elegance that seemed effortless. She wore a pre-ceremony dress that probably cost more than Regina made in a year. Her family was wealthy, connected, exactly what Jody needed to cement his position in Chicago's elite circles. Beauty glanced at Regina, and for just a moment, their eyes met. Regina expected to see contempt or dismissal, but instead she saw something else. Nervousness, maybe even doubt. It was brief, gone in an instant, but Regina had seen it. Beauty Chen was unsure about this wedding. That small glimpse of uncertainty gave Regina courage. Maybe Beauty needed to know the truth too. Maybe Regina wouldn't just be exposing Jody. Maybe she'd be saving Beauty from making a terrible mistake. The lights dimmed. The guests quieted. Patricia gave Regina a thumbs up from the side of the room. The pianist played the opening notes of At Last, and Regina began to sing. Her voice filled the ballroom, rich and powerful and achingly beautiful. Guests who had been fidgeting stopped moving. Conversations died. Everyone turned to listen to this pregnant woman singing about finally finding true love, and the irony of it made Regina want to laugh and cry at the same time. Through the ornate doors at the back of the ballroom, Beauty appeared in her wedding gown. It was magnificent. White silk, thousands of crystals, a train that flowed behind her like water. She looked like a princess. She looked like everything Jody had said he wanted. Beauty began her slow walk down the aisle on her father's arm, and Regina watched Jody's face. He was smiling, but it wasn't a smile of love or joy. It was a smile of satisfaction, of accomplishment. He looked like a man who just closed a business deal, not like someone about to marry the love of his life. Regina finished At Last as Beauty reached the altar. The minister, a distinguished older man in ceremonial robes, began the ceremony. Regina sat quietly on her stool, watching and waiting. "Dearly beloved," the minister intoned, "we are gathered here today to witness the joining of Jody Marshall and Beauty Chen in holy matrimony." The ceremony proceeded with all the traditional elements, readings about love and commitment, vows that sounded beautiful but felt hollow, at least to Regina's ears. Jody and Beauty faced each other, holding hands, speaking words about forever and faithfulness that made Regina feel sick given what she knew about Jody's capacity for both. Then came the moment Regina had been both dreading and anticipating. "The bride and groom will now sign the marriage certificate," the minister announced. "While they do, our vocalist will perform for us once more." This was it, the moment of decision. Regina stood up slowly, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward. She could feel 300 pairs of eyes on her. She could feel the weight of this choice pressing down on her shoulders. Patricia smiled encouragingly from the wings, assuming Regina would perform Can't Help Falling in Love as planned. Jody bent over the marriage certificate, expensive pen in hand, not even looking at Regina. He probably thought she was about to sing another love song that would make his wedding even more perfect. Regina looked at her 2 folders of sheet music, the safe choice and the dangerous truth. Her hand hovered between them. The baby kicked inside her belly, hard and insistent, as if voting. Regina made her choice. She reached for the folder containing When Love Wasn't Enough and pulled out the sheet music. She handed it to the pianist, who looked confused. This wasn't the song they'd rehearsed. But the pianist, an older black man with kind eyes, looked at the music, then at Regina's face, and saw something there that made him nod slowly. He would follow her lead. Regina turned to face the microphone. The ballroom was silent, waiting. "Ladies and gentlemen," Regina said, her voice clear and strong despite her racing heart, "I'd like to perform a different song than originally planned, if that's all right. Something a bit more personal." Patricia looked panicked in the wings, shaking her head frantically. Jody glanced up from the marriage certificate, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. But he didn't want to cause a scene, so he waved his hand dismissively as if to say, "Whatever, just sing something." He had no idea what was coming. Regina closed her eyes for just a moment, gathering all her courage. Then she opened them, looked directly at Jody, and began to sing. The pianist found the opening chord, and Regina's voice filled the ballroom with the first line of When Love Wasn't Enough. You said I was beautiful, then said I wasn't right. Said my world was too small for your ambitious heights. You took what you wanted, then walked out the door, left me with your child and a heart ripped and torn. Jody's head snapped up. His face went pale. He recognized those words, recognized that this wasn't a standard wedding song. This was something else entirely. Regina continued, her voice growing stronger with each line. I wasn't from the right family, didn't have the right name, so you traded our love for your fortune and fame. Now you stand at this altar like you're pure and you're true, but there's a baby coming who looks just like you. The ballroom erupted in shocked whispers. Guests turned to each other, confused and fascinated. Someone near the back pulled out their phone and started recording. Beauty's eyes widened in horror as understanding dawned. She looked from Regina's pregnant belly to Jody's guilty face and back again. Patricia tried to rush the stage to stop the performance, but Adam, Jody's best man, surprisingly held up his hand to stop her. Adam had known about Regina and the pregnancy, and some part of him wanted to see this play out. Wanted to see Jody finally face consequences for his actions. Regina sang the chorus, and now tears flowed freely down her face. Not tears of weakness, but tears of release. When love wasn't enough, you chose gold over grace. When love wasn't enough, you disappeared without a trace. But I'm still standing here, stronger than before. When love wasn't enough for you, it became everything to me and more. The pianist played beautifully, following Regina's lead perfectly, adding emotional weight to every phrase. Some of the guests were crying now. Women in the audience held their hands over their hearts, recognizing the pain in Regina's voice, connecting with their own stories of betrayal and abandonment. Jody stood frozen at the altar, his perfect wedding crumbling around him. He looked like he wanted to run off the stage and physically stop Regina, but he was trapped by 300 witnesses and his own pride. Beauty took a step back from Jody, her hands trembling. The marriage certificate lay unsigned on the table between them. Regina sang the second verse, her voice soaring. You hired me to sing at your wedding today. Thought you'd watch me break down while you gave your heart away. But I'm not here for pity, and I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to speak my truth before this story ends. If you think what Jody did was wrong, comment "real love means taking responsibility" below. Because that's what this story is really about. The difference between people who run from their responsibilities and people who face them with courage. Regina reached the bridge, and her voice filled every corner of that crystal ballroom. So to the bride in white, please hear what I say. The man beside you threw his own child away. If he could do that to us, what will he do to you when your love isn't perfect, when you're no longer new? Beauty's hand flew to her mouth. Tears started streaming down her perfectly made-up face, ruining her wedding makeup. She turned to Jody with an expression of betrayal and horror. Beauty, don't listen to her. Jody finally found his voice, reaching for his bride. She's lying, she's crazy, she's just trying to ruin our day. But Beauty stepped away from him. Is she pregnant with your baby? Beauty's voice rang out clear in the silent ballroom. The question hung in the air. Jody opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. His face cycled through emotions: anger, guilt, panic, calculation. 300 witnesses watched him struggle to find a lie that would work, but there was no lie good enough. The truth was standing on that stage, 7.5 months pregnant, singing it for everyone to hear. Regina sang the final chorus with everything she had. When love wasn't enough, You chose pride over truth. When love wasn't enough, you proved you had no Ruth. But I'm still standing here, my baby and me, when love wasn't enough for you. It set me free. The last note hung in the air, beautiful and heartbreaking and powerful. Then silence fell over the crystal terrace. Complete, absolute silence. Regina stood at the microphone, tears streaming down her face, one hand resting protectively on her pregnant belly. She had done it. She had told her truth in front of 300 witnesses, and now she would face whatever consequences came. The silence in the crystal terrace lasted maybe 5 seconds, but to Regina, it felt like an eternity. 300 faces stared at her, some shocked, some sympathetic, some angry, all of them processing what they'd just witnessed. Regina's heart hammered so hard she could hear it in her ears. The baby kicked frantically inside her belly as if sharing her mother's anxiety. Then the silence shattered. Is that true? Beauty's voice cut through the ballroom like a knife. She stood at the altar in her magnificent wedding gown, but all that expensive beauty couldn't hide the devastation on her face. Jody, is she pregnant with your child? Jody's face had gone from pale to red with rage. He pointed at Regina with a shaking finger. You had no right, he hissed, his carefully cultivated composure crumbling. This is my wedding, my day. How dare you come here and answer the question? Beauty's voice rose, sharp and commanding. For the first time since Regina had seen her, Beauty looked less like a perfect society bride and more like a real woman dealing with real betrayal. Is that baby yours? The guests were murmuring now, whispers building into conversations. Phones were out everywhere, recording, photographing, live tweeting what was quickly becoming the most dramatic wedding Chicago had seen in years. Jody looked around at all those witnesses, all those phones, all that evidence that would make denial impossible. His shoulders slumped slightly, and Regina saw the exact moment he realized he couldn't lie his way out of this. Beauty, listen to me, he said, his voice taking on a pleading tone that Regina had never heard before. It's complicated. Complicated? Beauty laughed, but it was a harsh, broken sound. That's not an answer. Yes or no, Jody? Is she carrying your baby? More silence. Then, barely audible, yes. The ballroom exploded. Guests stood up, talking loudly, some in support of Beauty, others defending Jody, many just gossiping excitedly about the scandal unfolding before them. Patricia, the event planner, looked like she might faint. The minister quietly backed away from the altar, clearly wanting no part of this disaster. When? Beauty demanded, and now her voice was shaking. When did this happen? Before us, Jody said quickly, desperately. Before we got serious, Beauty. It was over before I even met you. But the baby is coming now, Beauty said, looking at Regina's very pregnant belly. Which means you were with her less than a year ago. We've been together for 10 months, Jody. You overlapped us, didn't you? Jody's silence was answer enough. Regina watched this unfold from the stage, feeling strangely detached from her body. Part of her wanted to step in, to explain her side of the story. But another part of her knew that this moment belonged to Beauty. This was Beauty's betrayal to process, Beauty's decision to make about her future. Beauty turned to look at Regina fully for the first time. Their eyes met across the length of the ballroom, two women connected by the same man's cruelty. When did he leave you? Beauty asked, her voice softer now. When I told him I was pregnant, Regina answered honestly. He said I wasn't from the right world, that I didn't have the right background or connections. He gave me money and walked away. Beauty's face crumpled. She looked down at the unsigned marriage certificate on the table, then back at Jody. You abandoned a pregnant woman because she wasn't rich enough? Because she didn't have the right family name? Beauty, you don't understand the pressure I was under, Jody said, his voice taking on the manipulative edge Regina remembered so well. I was building my company. I needed focus. I needed a partner who understood that world, who could help me navigate it. Regina was sweet, but she wasn't. Don't you dare! Regina found her voice again, stronger now. Don't you dare try to make this about business strategy. You made a choice to abandon your child because you cared more about image than integrity. You were trying to trap me, Jody shouted, losing control completely now. You got pregnant on purpose to lock me down. We used protection every time, Regina shot back, her voice steady despite her anger. Accidents happen, Jody, but abandoning the result isn't an accident. That was a choice, your choice. Adam, the best man, stepped forward and put a hand on Jody's shoulder. Man, stop talking, Adam said quietly. You're just making this worse. But Jody shook him off. He was spiraling now, his carefully constructed life falling apart in real time. This is all her fault, he said, gesturing wildly at Regina. She came here to ruin my life. She planned this whole thing. You hired her, Beauty said, and her voice was ice cold now. Patricia told me you specifically requested a female vocalist with raw emotional talent. You knew exactly who you were hiring, didn't you? Jody froze. He'd been caught in his own trap. You hired your pregnant ex-girlfriend to sing at our wedding, Beauty continued, her voice getting stronger with each word. Why would you do that unless you wanted to humiliate her? Unless you wanted everyone to see how far you'd climbed while she struggled? What kind of person does that, Jody? I was trying to help her. Jody's lies were getting more desperate. She needed the money, and I was being generous. By forcing her to watch you marry someone else? Beauty's voice cracked. That's not generosity, that's cruelty. A woman in the front row stood up. She was older, maybe in her 60s, wearing an elegant purple dress. I've heard enough, she announced in a voice that commanded attention. Beauty, sweetheart, don't marry this man. Aunt Linda, stay out of this, Jody said through gritted teeth. But Aunt Linda ignored him. She walked toward the altar, her eyes fixed on Beauty. I knew something was off about Jody when your father introduced him. Too smooth, too calculated, always saying exactly what people wanted to hear. But you loved him, so I kept quiet. Not anymore. What he did to that young woman, abandoning her and their child, that shows you exactly who he is. Character reveals itself in crisis, and he failed the test. Other guests started speaking up. A man in the back shouted, Beauty, walk away, you can do better. A younger woman near the middle called out, That took so much courage, presumably directed at Regina. But there were Jody supporters too. Some of his business associates tried to defend him, saying things like, it's complicated, and we don't know the full story, and let's not rush to judgment. Regina felt overwhelmed by the chaos she'd unleashed. Her legs were shaking, her back hurt from standing so long while pregnant, and she desperately needed to sit down. Kim, who'd been sitting in the back row, rushed toward the stage to help Regina to a chair. I've got you, Kim whispered, supporting Regina's weight. You did it. You told the truth. Whatever happens now, you did it. Meanwhile, at the altar, Beauty had picked up the expensive pen that Jody had used to sign the marriage certificate. She held it for a long moment, and everyone in the ballroom held their breath, wondering if she would sign and proceed with the wedding despite everything. Then Beauty dropped the pen. It clattered loudly on the marble floor, the sound echoing in the tense silence. "I'm not doing this," Beauty said, her voice clear and final. "I'm not marrying someone who could treat another human being the way you treated Regina. If you could abandon your own child, what would you do to me when I stop being useful to your image?" "Beauty, please." Jody's voice was desperate now. "Think about what you're throwing away. Our life together, our plans, everything we've built." "Everything you've built," Beauty corrected. "This whole relationship has been about you, your company, your image, your needs. I was just another acquisition, wasn't I? Another asset to help you climb higher." Jody's face confirmed the truth of her words, even though he said nothing. Beauty looked out at the 300 guests, many of them her family and friends. "I'm sorry you all traveled here for nothing, but I'd rather cancel a wedding than spend my life with someone who values money and status over basic human decency." She turned back to Regina, who was sitting now, Kim's arm around her shoulders. "Thank you," Beauty said, and Regina could see she meant it. "You saved me from making a terrible mistake. I'm sorry for what he put you through." "I'm sorry about your wedding," Regina said softly. "I didn't want to ruin your day." "You didn't ruin it," Beauty said, wiping tears from her eyes. "You revealed the truth. There's a difference." Beauty gathered up the skirt of her wedding dress and began walking down the aisle, away from the altar, away from Jody, away from a marriage that would have destroyed her. Her father, who'd been sitting in the front row looking stunned, stood up and offered his arm. Together, father and daughter walked out of the crystal terrace while guests parted to let them through. Jody stood alone at the altar, abandoned by his bride in front of everyone who mattered in his business and social world. His face cycled through emotions: rage, humiliation, disbelief. Then he locked eyes with Regina, and the hatred in his expression made her flinch. "You destroyed my life," Jody said, his voice low and venomous. "I will make you pay for this. I'll sue you. I'll make sure you never work in this city again. You'll do nothing," said a commanding voice. A distinguished-looking man in his 50s stood up from his seat near the middle of the ballroom. He wore an impeccably tailored suit and had the kind of presence that made people listen when he spoke. Regina didn't know who he was, but clearly Jody did. Jody's face went even paler, if that was possible. "Mr. Harrison," Jody said weakly. "Jody, I'm Robert Harrison, on the board of directors at Marshall Tech," the man said, addressing the room more than Jody. "I came to this wedding expecting to celebrate. Instead, I've witnessed something that tells me everything I need to know about your character, or lack thereof. Mr. Harrison, this is a personal matter." Jody tried to regain control. "It has nothing to do with the company." "It has everything to do with the company," Mr. Harrison replied sharply. "Marshall Tech's reputation is built on innovation, integrity, and treating people well. You've demonstrated none of those qualities today. You abandoned a pregnant woman because of classist prejudice. You tried to humiliate her by hiring her for your wedding. And when exposed, you showed no remorse, no accountability, just anger at being caught." Other people in the ballroom were nodding along with Mr. Harrison's words. Regina recognized a few of them as other board members or business partners from photos she'd seen in Jody's apartment during their relationship. "The board will be meeting on Monday," Mr. Harrison continued, "to discuss whether someone with your demonstrated lack of character should be leading our company. I've already heard from 3 major clients who were here today, and they're reconsidering their contracts with us. Your personal choices have become a professional liability." Jody looked like he'd been punched. In the span of 30 minutes, he'd lost his bride, his reputation, and now potentially his company. Everything he'd valued above Regina and their child was crumbling. "This is all her fault," Jody said again, pointing at Regina, but his voice sounded hollow now. "She came here to destroy me." "No," said Adam, finally speaking up. "She came here to do a job you hired her for. You destroyed yourself, Jody. You did this. Own it." But Jody couldn't own it. Regina could see that clearly now. He was a man so deeply invested in his own righteousness that he couldn't accept responsibility for his actions. In his mind, he would always be the victim, always be the one wronged, even when all the evidence pointed to his own cruelty. Patricia, the event planner, approached Regina hesitantly. "Miss Parker, I had no idea about any of this. If I had known, I never would have facilitated." "It's not your fault," Regina said tiredly. "You were just doing your job." Still, Patricia pulled an envelope from her bag. "This is your payment as agreed. $5,000. You earned it. And Regina, what you did took more courage than anything I've seen in 15 years of wedding planning." Regina took the envelope with shaking hands. $5,000. The money she'd needed so desperately. But now it felt complicated, tainted by everything that had happened. Kim helped Regina stand. "We should go," Kim said quietly. "You need to rest. This has been too much stress." Regina nodded, but before she could move, several women approached her. Some were crying, others looked angry. All of them seemed to have been deeply affected by what they'd witnessed. "I was abandoned when I was pregnant too," one woman said, taking Regina's hand. 20 years ago. Thank you for speaking up. Thank you for showing that we don't have to accept being treated as disposable. My daughter is in an abusive relationship," another woman said. "I've been trying to convince her to leave. I'm going to show her your video. I think seeing your courage might help her find her own." "There's video?" Regina asked, suddenly realizing the full implications of what had happened. Multiple people held up their phones. "It's already online," a younger woman said. "Multiple angles posted on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. This is going viral, Regina. The whole world is going to see what you did." Regina felt her knees go weak. She'd been so focused on just getting through the performance that she hadn't thought about the aftermath, about the fact that this moment would be immortalized online forever, about the fact that her child would one day see this video and know exactly how they were conceived and how their father had reacted. "I need to sit," Regina said, and Kim quickly helped her back to a chair. The ballroom was emptying now. Guests were leaving in groups, talking animatedly about what they'd witnessed. Some approached Regina to offer support or share their own stories. Others left quickly, uncomfortable with the raw emotion and drama they'd witnessed. A few of Jody's business associates tried to talk to him, but he stood at that altar alone, looking shell-shocked and destroyed. Mr. Harrison approached Regina before he left. "Miss Parker, I don't know if this helps, but I want you to know something. Jody Marshall is no longer someone I respect or trust. The board will likely remove him as CEO, and I'll personally ensure you receive additional financial support if you need it. What he did to you was unconscionable, and our company doesn't want to be associated with that kind of behavior." "Thank you," Regina said, though she was too overwhelmed to fully process what he was offering. After Mr. Harrison left, Adam approached. He looked ashamed and sad. "Regina, I owe you an apology. I knew what Jody did to you. I knew about the baby, and I said nothing. I told myself it was none of my business, but that was cowardice. I'm sorry. Regina studied Jody's best friend, or former best friend, based on how things looked now. Why are you apologizing now? Because I've watched Jody become someone I don't recognize over the past few years, Adam said honestly. He used to be a decent guy, ambitious, sure, but he cared about people. Then success changed him. He started seeing people as assets or liabilities instead of human beings. I kept hoping he'd snap out of it, that the old Jody would come back. But after today, after watching him try to humiliate you, I realized that person might be gone forever. Or maybe he was never who I thought he was. Adam pulled out a business card and handed it to Regina. I run my own consulting firm. If you ever need anything, a job reference, professional help, whatever, please reach out. I mean it. And for what it's worth, I think your baby is lucky to have you as a mother. Jody's the one who lost out, not you. After Adam walked away, Kim helped Regina gather her things. Can you walk, or should I get a wheelchair? I can walk, Regina said, though everything hurt. Her back, her feet, her heart. Let's just go home. They made their way slowly through the Crystal Terrace and out to the parking lot where Kim's old Honda waited. As they walked, Regina could hear Jody's voice behind them, still in the ballroom, still making excuses to whoever would listen, still refusing to take responsibility. Some people never changed. Some people never learned. Jody Marshall was one of them. But Regina had changed. In the past 6 months, she'd gone from broken and desperate to strong and courageous. She'd stood up for herself and her child in the most public way possible. And while she didn't know what would happen next, what consequences or opportunities would come from this viral moment, she knew one thing for certain. She was done being afraid, done being ashamed, done letting Jody Marshall or anyone else make her feel like she wasn't enough. The baby kicked inside her belly, and Regina put her hand over the spot, smiling despite everything. We did it, little one, she whispered. We told our truth. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Kim drove them home through Chicago's streets while the sun set over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Regina's phone buzzed constantly with notifications, messages, calls from numbers she didn't recognize. The story was spreading faster than she could have imagined. But Regina turned off her phone and leaned her head against the car window, watching the city pass by. Tomorrow, she would deal with the aftermath. Tomorrow, she would face whatever consequences came from her choice to sing that song. Tonight, she just wanted to rest. She wanted to process what had happened. She wanted to feel the full weight of what she'd done, the bravery and the recklessness of it, the justice and the chaos. She'd walked into that wedding as Jody's victim. She walked out as her own hero, and that transformation, painful as it had been to achieve, was worth everything. Regina slept for 12 hours straight after the wedding. Her body, pushed to its limits by stress and pregnancy, simply shut down the moment she got home. Kim checked on her every few hours, worried about preterm labor or complications. But Regina slept peacefully, one hand resting on her belly. Her face finally relaxed after months of carrying tension in every muscle. When Regina finally woke up, it was Sunday morning. Sunlight streamed through the cheap curtains of their studio apartment, and for a blissful few seconds, Regina forgot about everything that had happened. Then reality came rushing back. The wedding, the song, Beauty walking away, Jody's furious face, 300 witnesses recording every moment. Regina's phone sat on the nightstand where she'd left it, turned off. She stared at it for a long time, knowing that once she turned it on, her life would never be the same. Kim came over with a cup of tea. "Morning, Sleeping Beauty. How are you feeling?" "Sore," Regina admitted, accepting the tea gratefully. "My back hurts, my feet are swollen, and I think the baby hasn't stopped kicking since yesterday." "That's because your baby knows their mama is a warrior," Kim said with a proud smile. "Regina, you need to see what's happening online. But first, promise me you won't freak out." "That's not a promising start," Regina said, but she powered on her phone anyway. The notifications came flooding in. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Text messages, missed calls, voicemails, emails, social media notifications. Regina's hands started shaking as she scrolled through them. The video of her performance had exploded online. Multiple versions existed now, shot from different angles by different guests. But the most viewed one had a caption that read, "Pregnant singer exposes groom's betrayal at luxury wedding. Most powerful 5 minutes you'll ever watch." That single video had over 30 million views across different platforms. 30 million people had watched Regina sing When Love Wasn't Enough. They'd watched Beauty walk away from the altar. They'd watched Jody's world collapse in real time. The comment sections were overwhelming. Thousands upon thousands of people weighing in. "This woman is a queen. The courage this took is unbelievable. I'm literally crying. Her voice, her pain, everything about this is beautiful and heartbreaking. Jody Marshall is trash. Imagine abandoning your pregnant girlfriend because she's not rich enough." Beauty dodged a bullet. Thank God she was smart enough to walk away. "Where can I download this song? I need it in my life. This gave me the courage to leave my toxic relationship. If she can stand up in front of 300 people, I can stand up for myself too." But there were negative comments too. "She ruined someone's wedding. That's petty and vindictive. Why didn't she just take the money and move on? This seems like attention-seeking. We're only hearing one side of the story. Maybe she did trap him." Regina felt overwhelmed by the sheer volume of opinions from strangers who felt entitled to judge her choices. Kim noticed her expression and gently took the phone away. "Don't read the comments section," Kim advised. "Nothing good ever comes from that. Focus on the people who understand what you did and why you did it." Regina nodded, but her mind was spinning. "Kim, this is everywhere. My face, my voice, my story. Everyone knows now, including my mom, including everyone from our old neighborhood, including—" Regina stopped, a horrifying realization hitting her. "Oh God, the baby. When the baby grows up, they're going to see this video. They're going to know exactly how they were conceived, how their father reacted, everything. And they'll see their mother being brave," Kim said firmly. "They'll see you standing up for both of you. They'll see you refusing to be silenced or shamed. Regina, your kid is going to be proud of you." Regina wanted to believe that, but she felt so exposed. Her most painful moments were now public entertainment, clickbait for the internet, a viral sensation that people would watch once and forget while it was her actual life. Regina's phone rang in Kim's hand. Kim checked the caller ID and her eyes widened. "It's your mom." Regina's heart sank. Her mother, who worked so hard and sacrificed so much, now had to deal with her daughter becoming an internet sensation for singing about being abandoned while pregnant. Regina answered, bracing herself for judgment or disappointment. "Mom? Baby girl." Diane's voice came through, thick with emotion. "I just watched that video. Are you okay?" I don't know, Regina admitted, tears already forming. I didn't mean for it to go viral. I just wanted... You wanted justice, Diane interrupted. You wanted truth. And baby, you got it. I am so proud of you. Regina's tears spilled over. You're not angry? You're not disappointed that I made a scene and now everyone's talking about our family? Angry? Diane laughed, but it was warm. Regina, that man tried to humiliate you. He abandoned you and his child because you weren't fancy enough for his world. And you stood up there pregnant and powerful, and you sang the truth right in his face. Why would I be anything but proud? You're my daughter. You have my strength and my voice, and you used both of them exactly like I would have. Regina sobbed with relief. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby. Now listen, your phone is probably going crazy with calls and messages. Some people are going to want to help you. Some are going to want to use you. And some are going to criticize you no matter what you do. You can't control any of that, but you can control how you respond. Keep your head up, remember who you are, and don't let this define you. You're not just the wedding truth singer. You're Regina Parker, and you've always been enough. After they hung up, Regina felt slightly better. Her mother's approval meant more than 1 million internet comments. But the phone calls kept coming. News outlets wanting interviews, talk shows requesting appearances, record labels expressing interest, entertainment lawyers offering their services. Everyone wanted a piece of Regina's viral moment. One call stood out from a woman named Diana Foster, who identified herself as a music producer and artist manager. Regina, I've been in this business for 20 years, and I can tell you right now, you have something special. Not just a good voice, but authenticity that's rare in today's music industry. I'd love to meet with you this week to discuss your future. No pressure, no commitment, just a conversation. Regina agreed to meet, mainly because Diana sounded genuine and professional rather than opportunistic. But the most surprising call came Monday afternoon from an unknown Chicago number. Regina almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Is this Regina Parker? A woman's voice asked, familiar, but Regina couldn't place it. Yes, who is this? It's Beauty Chen from Saturday. Regina sat up straight, her heart racing. Beauty? Are you okay? That's what I was going to ask you, Beauty said with a slight laugh that sounded sad. I know this is weird, me calling you. But Regina, I need to thank you properly. You saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. I'm sorry about your wedding, Regina said, meaning it. I didn't want to ruin your day. Please stop apologizing, Beauty said gently. You didn't ruin anything. You revealed the truth. There's a difference. Regina, I had doubts about Jody for weeks, but I kept pushing them down because the wedding was planned. People were traveling. My parents were excited. I was going through the motions of marrying someone I wasn't sure I loved because it seemed easier than canceling everything. Beauty took a shaky breath. When I heard you sing that song, when I finally understood who Jody really was, I felt relieved. Heartbroken, humiliated, angry, yes, but also relieved. You gave me permission to trust my instincts, to walk away even though it was hard. So thank you. Truly. Regina didn't know what to say. She'd expected Beauty to hate her, to blame her for the wedding disaster. Instead, Beauty was thanking her. What are you going to do now? Regina asked. Take time to figure out who I am outside of Jody's world, Beauty said. My family has money, so I'm fortunate that way. But I realize I've spent my whole life trying to be the perfect daughter, the perfect girlfriend, the perfect trophy wife. I don't know who I am when I'm not performing for other people, so I'm going to figure that out. That sounds healthy, Regina said. What about you? How are you handling all this attention? Regina laughed bitterly. Honestly, I'm overwhelmed. My life was private on Friday. Now millions of people have opinions about me and my choices. It's a lot. I can imagine, Beauty said sympathetically. Listen, Regina, if you ever need anything, and I mean anything, please call me. We're connected now through this weird, terrible, transformative experience. I'd like to think we could be friends, or at least friendly. After they hung up, Regina felt something shift inside her. Beauty's call had humanized what had felt like an abstract viral moment. These weren't just numbers and views and comments. These were real people whose lives had been affected by her choice to sing that song. What would you have done if you were in Regina's shoes? Would you have sung the truth or played it safe? Let me know in the comments because this question matters. It's about whether we speak up when it's hard or stay silent to protect others' comfort. Tuesday brought the revelation that would change everything. Regina met with Diana Foster at a quiet coffee shop downtown. Diana was in her 40s, African-American, with natural hair and a warm, professional demeanor that immediately put Regina at ease. "Thank you for meeting with me," Diana said, ordering tea for both of them. "I know you're being bombarded with offers right now." "That's an understatement," Regina admitted. "I don't know how to process any of this." "Then let me help you," Diana said. "Here's what I see when I watch that video. Yes, I see a viral moment, an internet sensation. But more importantly, I see a woman with an incredible voice telling a story that millions of people relate to. Abandonment, betrayal, choosing dignity over silence. These are universal themes, Regina. Your song touched people because it's real. It's honest. It's raw." Diana pulled out her tablet and showed Regina some data. Since Saturday, When Love Wasn't Enough, has been searched for millions of times. People want to download it, stream it, learn the lyrics. You've accidentally created an anthem. The question is, what do you want to do with this opportunity? Regina looked at the data, charts showing search trends, social media analytics, demographic information about who was watching and sharing the video. It was overwhelming, but also intriguing. "I don't want to profit from my pain," Regina said carefully. "It feels wrong somehow." "What if it's not about profiting from pain, but about transforming pain into something that helps others?" Diana suggested. "You could record When Love Wasn't Enough professionally. Release it on streaming platforms. Donate proceeds to charities that support single mothers or domestic violence survivors. You could write more songs about your experiences. You could become a voice for women who feel voiceless." Regina felt a flicker of excitement beneath her anxiety. "You really think people would listen to more of my music?" "Regina, 30 million people already did," Diana said with a smile. "And they're hungry for more. But here's what matters. You get to decide what this becomes. You can let this be just a viral moment that fades in a few weeks, or you can build something meaningful from it. I want to help you do the latter if you're interested." Regina thought about her baby, due in less than 2 months. She thought about the $5,000 from the wedding that would run out eventually. She thought about the possibility of building a real music career instead of scraping by on small gigs. "What would this look like practically?" Regina asked. Diana laid out a plan. Record When Love Wasn't Enough professionally in a studio. Release it as a single with all streaming proceeds going to charity for the first year. Use the publicity to book higher-paying performances at venues that aligned with Regina's values. Eventually write and record more original music that told Regina's story in her own words. "I'm not promising you'll become a superstar," Diana said honestly. "But I am saying you have a real opportunity here to build something sustainable, a career based on authenticity and talent. You'd be able to support yourself and your baby doing what you love, which is music." Regina felt the baby kick, and she put her hand over the spot. This was about more than just her now. This was about creating stability for her child, about showing them that their mother didn't just survive, she thrived. "Okay," Regina said, feeling a surge of determination. "Let's do it." Diana smiled widely. "Excellent. We'll start tomorrow with contracts and legal protection. You're going to need a good lawyer to manage all the offers coming your way and to protect you from people who might want to exploit this moment." As Regina left the coffee shop, her phone buzzed with yet another message. But this one made her blood run cold. It was from Jody. "You think you've won? You destroyed my wedding, my reputation, my business. But I'm not done. You'll regret what you did. I promise you that." Regina's hands shook as she read the message. Was it a threat? Should she report it to police? Or was Jody just lashing out from a place of wounded pride? She forwarded the message to Diana and to Kim, wanting documentation in case Jody tried anything. But she also felt a new resolve hardening inside her. Jody had tried to control her through abandonment, tried to humiliate her through that wedding gig, and now he was trying to scare her with vague threats. None of it would work. Regina was done being afraid of Jody Marshall. That evening, Regina received a call from Jack Morrison, a lawyer specializing in entertainment and personal protection. "Miss Parker, I saw your viral video, and I also saw Jody Marshall's threat to you on social media." "What threat on social media?" Regina asked, confused. "You haven't seen?" Jack pulled up Jody's Twitter account on his end. He posted about an hour ago. "Sometimes people create their own consequences. Karma is coming for those who destroy others." Regina felt sick. Was he threatening her publicly now? "I'd like to represent you," Jack continued. "No charge for the first consultation and case evaluation. What Jody did, abandoning you, hiring you for his wedding to humiliate you, and now making what could be interpreted as threats. We may have grounds for legal action. At minimum, we need to document everything in case he escalates." Regina agreed to meet with Jack the next day. Everything was moving so fast. 4 days ago, she'd been just another struggling singer trying to survive. Now she had a potential music career, a lawyer, millions of people following her story, and an ex who seemed intent on revenge. Wednesday morning brought the biggest revelation yet. Mr. Harrison, the board member from the wedding, called Regina directly. "Miss Parker, I wanted to update you on what's happened with Marshall Tech. The board voted yesterday to remove Jody Marshall as CEO effective immediately. His behavior demonstrated a fundamental lack of character that we cannot accept in our leadership." Regina was stunned. He lost his company? "He still owns shares, but he no longer runs it," Mr. Harrison clarified. "The board also voted to establish a fund. We're calling it the Marshall Tech Responsibility Initiative. It will provide financial support to single mothers in Chicago who are pursuing education or career development. We'd like to name you as the first recipient if you're comfortable with that. The fund would provide $20,000 annually for 5 years to support you and your child." Regina couldn't speak. $20,000 a year for 5 years. That was $100,000 total. That was stability. That was security. That was everything she needed and more. Why? Regina finally managed to ask. Why would you do this? Because what happened at that wedding embarrassed our entire company, Mr. Harrison said bluntly. Jody's behavior reflected poorly on all of us. But more importantly, it was wrong. You and your child deserve support, and this is our way of making amends for the fact that our former CEO failed in his basic human responsibilities. After the call ended, Regina sat in stunned silence. In less than a week, her entire life had transformed. She had financial security, a potential music career, legal protection, and most importantly, she had her dignity back. That evening, as Regina prepared for bed, Kim said something profound. You know what the biggest revelation is? Not the money or the opportunities, or even Jody losing his company. It's that you learned your voice has power. When you speak your truth, the world listens. That's the real gift from all of this. Regina put her hand on her belly, feeling her baby move. Did you hear that, little one? Your mama has power, and I'm going to use it to make sure you grow up in a world where truth matters more than image, where character matters more than money, and where no one ever makes you feel like you're not enough. The baby kicked in response, and Regina smiled. Justice had arrived, but more than that, transformation had begun. Regina Parker was no longer just surviving. She was becoming someone new, someone stronger. And the best part? This was only the beginning. Now here's the question I need you to answer honestly. If someone betrayed you the way Jody betrayed Regina, would you have had the courage to expose them publicly? Or would fear have kept you silent? Comment below and tell me your truth. This matters because so many people are living in silence right now, protecting people who hurt them. 3 weeks after the wedding disaster, Regina's life had settled into a strange new normal. She'd signed with Diana Foster as her manager, hired Jack Morrison as her lawyer, and begun the process of recording When Love Wasn't Enough in a professional studio. The song would be released in 2 weeks, with all first-year proceeds going to the Chicago Single Mothers Alliance, a charity Regina had carefully researched and chosen. The viral attention had started to fade slightly, replaced by the next internet sensation, though Regina still received messages daily from women thanking her for inspiring them to leave toxic relationships or stand up for themselves. She'd done 3 carefully selected interviews, one with a respected podcast about single motherhood, one with a local Chicago news station, and one with a women's empowerment magazine. Diana had helped her decline the more sensationalistic opportunities that wanted to exploit her story rather than understand it. Regina was now 33 weeks pregnant, and her doctor had put her on modified bed rest after her blood pressure spiked during a recording session. Too much stress, Dr. Williams had warned. I know your life has been chaotic lately, but you need to prioritize this baby's health. So Regina spent her days in the apartment she and Kim still shared, though they were planning to move to a larger place once the baby arrived. The $20,000 from the Marshall Tech Responsibility Initiative had already been deposited in her account, transforming her financial situation overnight. Kim had taken the day off work to keep Regina company, and they were watching afternoon television when Regina's phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, tired of random reporters and opportunists, but something made her pick up. Hello? Regina Parker? A man's voice, uncertain and nervous. Yes, who's this? There was a long pause, then, this is Marcus Parker. Your father. Regina's entire body went rigid. The phone nearly slipped from her suddenly nerveless fingers. Kim, seeing Regina's expression, immediately moved closer. "What?" Regina whispered. "No, that's not... My father left when I was 3. He hasn't contacted me in 25 years. "I know," Marcus said, and Regina could hear genuine emotion in his voice. "I know I have no right to call you, no right to be in your life. But Regina, I saw the video. I saw you at that wedding, pregnant and alone. And God, I saw myself. I saw what I did to you and your mother, and I couldn't stay silent anymore." Regina's hands shook. Kim took the phone and put it on speaker so she could hear too. "Why are you calling me?" Regina demanded, anger flooding through her shock. "You had 25 years to reach out. Why now?" "Because I went viral? Because you want your 15 minutes of fame by association?" "No," Marcus said quickly. "I deserve that suspicion. I deserve your anger. But Regina, I'm calling because I'm ashamed. Watching that video, seeing that man abandon his child, I saw my own sin reflected back at me. I did that to you. I walked away from my responsibility, from my daughter, because I was selfish and immature and scared. And that justifies calling me now?" Regina's voice rose. "Do you want forgiveness? Absolution? What?" "I want to help," Marcus said simply. "I saw you're pregnant. I saw that the father isn't involved. And I thought, maybe I can't undo what I did to you, but maybe I can help with your child. Be the grandfather I never got to be to you." Regina laughed, but it was harsh and bitter. "You think you can just show up after 25 years and play grandfather? That's not how it works. You don't get to skip being a father and jump straight to being a grandparent." "I know," Marcus said, and his voice broke. "I know I don't deserve anything from you. But Regina, I've been sober for 5 years now. I'm in therapy. I've been working on myself, trying to become the man I should have been back then. When I saw your video, my sponsor told me I needed to make amends. Not for me, but for you. So you could have closure or whatever you need." "I don't need closure from you," Regina said coldly. "I had closure when you stopped sending birthday cards when I was 7. I had closure when my mom worked 3 jobs to give me everything you should have provided. I had closure when I learned that fathers are optional and mothers are everything." Kim squeezed Regina's hand supportively, but also whispered, "Maybe hear him out?" Regina glared at her friend, but took a shaky breath. "Fine. You have 5 minutes. Say what you came to say." Marcus spoke for the next several minutes, and Regina listened with her jaw clenched. He talked about his own childhood trauma, his alcoholism, his immaturity at 22 when Regina was born. He talked about leaving because he couldn't handle the responsibility, then being too ashamed to come back. He talked about watching Regina's video 7 times, crying each time, seeing his own cowardice reflected in Jody Marshall's actions. "The difference between me and that man," Marcus said, "is that he still has time. His child hasn't been born yet. He can still step up and be the father he's supposed to be. I lost that opportunity 25 years ago. But Regina, if you'd let me, I'd like to try to be part of your life now. Not as your father. I lost that right. But as someone who cares, who wants to support you, who wants to be better." Regina was silent for a long time. The baby kicked inside her belly, and she put her hand over the spot, thinking about generations of abandonment. Her father had left her. Jody had left her child. When did the cycle end? "Did my mother know you were calling?" Regina asked. "I reached out to Diane last week," Marcus admitted. "Asked if she thought you'd be willing to talk to me. She said it was your choice. but that I should be prepared for you to say no. She also said I broke her heart when I left, but she forgave me years ago. Not for me, but so she could move on. That sounded like her mother. Diane Parker had never been bitter or angry, despite having every right to be. She'd simply focused on surviving and raising Regina the best she could. "I need time," Regina said finally. "I need to process this. I need to think about whether I want you in my life. Because if you come in now, you can't leave again. My child doesn't need a grandfather who shows up out of guilt and disappears when it gets hard." "I understand," Marcus said. "Take all the time you need. I'll send you my contact information, and if you decide you want to talk again, I'll be here. And Regina, I'm proud of you. The woman you've become, despite not having me in your life. Your mother raised an incredible daughter." After the call ended, Regina sat in stunned silence. Kim waited patiently, knowing Regina needed to process. "What just happened?" Regina finally asked. "Your father called," Kim said gently. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Regina put both hands on her pregnant belly. "I have no idea." The next few days were emotionally complicated. Regina found herself thinking about Marcus constantly. His voice, his words, his claim that watching her video had triggered this change in him. Part of her wanted to believe in redemption, in second chances. Another part was furious that it took her public humiliation and viral fame for her father to suddenly care. She talked it through with her mother over the phone. Diane was characteristically calm and wise. "Baby, I can't tell you what to do. But I will say this. Forgiveness isn't about whether someone deserves it. It's about whether holding on to anger is serving you. Marcus was a terrible father. That's true. But if he's genuinely changed, if he genuinely wants to be part of your life and your child's life, you have to decide if you want to give him that chance." "What if he leaves again?" Regina asked, voicing her deepest fear. "Then you'll survive it, just like we survived it the first time," Diane said simply. "But Regina, what if he doesn't? What if he's actually become a better person? Are you willing to deprive your child of a grandfather out of fear?" That question haunted Regina for days. She was still wrestling with it when the final twist arrived. Something nobody, including Regina herself, saw coming. It was a Wednesday evening, and Regina was alone in the apartment while Kim worked late. She was practicing vocal exercises at her keyboard, preparing for the studio session scheduled for the next day, when someone knocked on her door. Regina looked through the peephole and froze. Standing in the hallway was Beauty Chen. Regina opened the door slowly, confused. "Beauty, what are you doing here?" Beauty looked different than she had at the wedding. No designer clothes or perfect makeup, just jeans, a sweater, and her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked younger, more real, more like an actual person instead of a society princess. "I'm sorry for showing up unannounced," Beauty said. "Can I come in?" Regina stepped aside, and Beauty entered the small apartment, looking around with what seemed like genuine curiosity rather than judgment. "Your place is cozy," Beauty said, sitting on the worn couch when Regina gestured to it. "It's small," Regina said honestly, "but it's home." Beauty nodded, then took a deep breath. "Regina, I came here because I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you weeks ago, but I was scared." Regina's heart rate picked up. "Okay." "After the wedding, I started digging into Jody's past," Beauty said. I wanted to understand who I'd almost married. I hired a private investigator to look into his history, his relationships, everything. Regina felt a chill run down her spine. And? Beauty pulled out her phone and showed Regina a document. You weren't the first, Regina. You weren't the first woman Jody dated from a different social class, got pregnant, and then abandoned. Regina stared at the document, her mind struggling to process what she was reading. It was a private investigator's report detailing another woman named Sky Martinez, who Jody had dated 4 years ago when he was just starting his company. Sky had gotten pregnant. Jody had paid her to terminate the pregnancy and sign a non-disclosure agreement. When Sky refused the termination but agreed to the NDA in exchange for a large settlement, Jody had simply disappeared from her life. She has a 3-year-old daughter, Beauty said quietly. Jody's daughter. He's never met her, never acknowledged her, sends monthly checks through a lawyer to maintain the NDA. Regina felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. There's another child? He has another daughter he abandoned? Yes, Beauty confirmed. And Regina, there's more. The investigator found evidence that Jody specifically targets women from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. He dates them, enjoys the relationship while it's convenient, then drops them when they become complicated. You weren't a victim of circumstance. You were a pattern. Regina couldn't breathe. All this time, she'd thought what happened to her was personal, specific to her situation. But it wasn't. She was just one in a series of women Jody had used and discarded. Why are you telling me this? Regina asked, tears streaming down her face. Because you deserve to know the truth, Beauty said firmly. And because I think Sky Martinez deserves to know she's not alone. With your permission, I'd like to connect you two. Maybe together, you can figure out how to hold Jody accountable. Not just for you, but for his daughter who's never met him, and for your baby who deserves better. Regina's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. Does Jody know you found this? Not yet, Beauty said. But he will. My family's lawyers are preparing a case. We believe the NDA Sky signed is unenforceable because it was signed under duress and covers up a pattern of behavior that constitutes abandonment of children. We're going to break that NDA, bring Sky's story to light, and make sure everyone knows exactly who Jody Marshall is. Regina looked at this woman who should have been her enemy, this woman who Jody had chosen over her, and felt overwhelming gratitude. Why are you doing this? You could walk away. This isn't your fight. Beauty's eyes filled with tears. Because I almost married a monster, and you saved me. Because there are other women out there who deserve justice. And because, Regina, I've learned something important. Women supporting women is how we change the world. Jody tried to pit us against each other by making us compete for his attention. But instead, we're going to stand together and expose him. The two women sat in silence for a moment, processing the magnitude of what Beauty had revealed. Then Regina asked the question that had been haunting her since the wedding. Do you think he can change? Do you think there's any hope for someone like Jody to become a better person? Beauty considered this carefully. Honestly, I don't know. Some people are capable of growth and transformation, but Jody has shown no remorse, no accountability, no desire to change. Until he does, he's just going to keep hurting people. Our job isn't to fix him. Our job is to protect others from him and make sure his pattern of behavior stops. Regina nodded slowly, feeling a new determination building inside her. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about Sky and her 3-year-old daughter. This was about every woman Jody might target in the future. This was about breaking a cycle of abuse and abandonment. "I want to meet Sky," Regina said firmly. "I want to hear her story, and I want to figure out how we can make sure Jody never does this to anyone else." Beauty smiled, and it was the first genuine smile Regina had seen from her. "I was hoping you'd say that. I have her number. She's been following your story since the wedding, and she's ready to talk." As Beauty prepared to leave, Regina stopped her at the door. "Thank you for coming here, for digging into the truth, for caring about women you don't even know. You could have just moved on with your life." "So could you," Beauty pointed out. "But you sang that song at my wedding instead. You chose courage over comfort. I'm just following your example." After Beauty left, Regina sat in the gathering darkness of her apartment, one hand on her pregnant belly, thinking about patterns and cycles and the ways people either perpetuate harm or break free from it. Her father had abandoned her. Now he wanted back in her life. Jody had abandoned her and his other daughter, Sky. Now he was facing consequences for his pattern of behavior. Where did redemption fit in? Who deserved second chances? And more importantly, who had the power to grant them? The baby kicked, and Regina felt a fierce protectiveness surge through her. "Your daddy has another daughter," she whispered to her unborn child. "You have a half-sister, and I'm going to make sure both of you know you're valuable, you're loved, and you're worth more than any man who walks away could ever understand." Regina picked up her phone and dialed the number Beauty had given her. It rang twice before a woman answered. "Hello? Sky? This is Regina Parker. I think we need to talk." The meeting between Regina and Sky Martinez took place 1 week later at a quiet cafe on Chicago's South Side. Regina arrived first, her pregnant belly making it difficult to navigate the narrow space between tables. She chose a corner booth that offered privacy and waited, nervous energy making her tap her fingers against the worn tabletop. When Sky walked in, Regina recognized her immediately, even though they'd never met. Sky carried herself with a wariness that Regina understood intimately, the defensive posture of a woman who'd been hurt badly and wasn't about to let it happen again. She was petite, with long dark hair and tired eyes that suggested too many sleepless nights, worrying about things that shouldn't be her burden alone. Sky's 3-year-old daughter, Elena, held her mother's hand tightly, looking around the cafe with wide, curious eyes. The little girl had Jody's eyes, that same distinctive hazel color. Seeing Jody's features on an actual child, his actual daughter that he'd never met, made Regina's heart ache. "Regina?" Sky asked tentatively. "That's me," Regina said, standing awkwardly with her pregnant belly. "And you must be Sky. And this beautiful girl is Elena?" Elena hid behind her mother's leg, shy. Sky lifted the little girl into the booth and ordered hot chocolate for her before turning her full attention to Regina. "I can't believe this is happening," Sky said quietly once Elena was distracted with crayons and a coloring book the cafe provided. "I've watched your video probably 100 times. Every time I see you standing up there singing the truth, I think that could have been me if I'd had the courage." "You had a 3-year-old to protect," Regina said gently. "That takes a different kind of courage. You did what you had to do to survive." Sky's eyes filled with tears. "I signed that NDA because Jody's lawyers made it sound like I had no choice. They said if I didn't sign, they'd drag me through court, ruin my reputation, prove I was an unfit mother." I was 22 years old, pregnant, and terrified. So I signed, took the money, and promised to never tell anyone that Jody Marshall was Elena's father. Regina reached across the table and took Sky's hand. You don't have to keep that promise anymore. Beauty's lawyers are working to invalidate that NDA. You're going to be free to tell your story. What if he comes after me? Sky asked, her voice shaking. What if he tries to take Elena away? He has money and lawyers and we have the truth. Regina interrupted firmly. Sky, Jody's power comes from secrecy, from keeping women isolated and scared. But when we stand together, when we speak publicly, that power disappears. He can't fight all of us. Sky looked at Elena, coloring peacefully, unaware that her entire existence had been denied by her father. I want her to know her father someday, Sky admitted. Not because Jody deserves her, but because Elena deserves to know where she comes from. Every kid should know both their parents, even if one of them is terrible. Regina understood that sentiment completely. She thought about her own father, Marcus, who'd called weeks ago seeking redemption. Have you had any contact with Jody since Elena was born? Nothing direct, Sky said. Money appears in my account every month. Exactly $5,000. I assume it's from him, keeping up his end of the settlement. But I haven't seen him or spoken to him in over 3 years. Sometimes I wonder if he even thinks about Elena, if he ever wonders what she looks like or what kind of person she's becoming. I don't think men like Jody think that way, Regina said sadly. They compartmentalize. We become problems they've solved with money, not human beings with feelings and children who need fathers. They talked for over 2 hours, sharing their stories, finding the common threads that connected their experiences with Jody. The initial charm, the expensive dates, the way he made them feel special and chosen. Then the slow revelation that they were projects to him, experiments in dating outside his social class, relationships he never intended to make permanent. He told me I was too emotional, Sky said, that I was dragging him down with my drama when I was upset about working 3 jobs while pregnant. Like needing emotional support was a character flaw. He told me I didn't have the right connections, Regina shared, that he needed someone who could help him climb the social ladder, and I was dead weight. He's a narcissist, Sky said bluntly. My therapist explained it to me. People like Jody don't see others as real humans with value. They see us as tools, useful or not useful. When we stop being useful, they discard us without guilt. Regina thought about this. It explained so much about Jody's behavior, his complete lack of remorse, his anger at being exposed rather than shame for his actions. Do you think people like that can change? Sky shrugged. My therapist says anyone can change if they want to, but most people don't want to badly enough. They'd have to admit they were wrong, feel genuine remorse, do the hard work of transformation. Does Jody seem like someone willing to do any of that? No, Regina admitted. He seems like someone who just wants everyone to forget what happened and move on. Then he won't change, Sky said simply. And our job is to protect our kids from expecting something from him that he can't give. As they prepared to leave, Sky asked the question Regina had been dreading. What's your plan? With the baby, I mean. Are you going to pursue custody arrangements, child support, legally establishing paternity? I don't know yet, Regina said honestly. Part of me wants nothing from him. But the practical part knows my child deserves financial support at minimum. My lawyer is working on it. Be prepared for a fight, Sky warned. Jody doesn't like being told what to do. When I first tried to get child support before the settlement, his lawyers threatened me with so many things I got scared and backed down. That's when they offered the NDA and monthly payments. Make sure you're ready for battle." Regina looked down at her pregnant belly, feeling her baby move. "I'm ready. I've already fought him once in front of 300 people. I can fight him again in court." Sky smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. "You're braver than I was. I think Elena and your baby are lucky to have such a strong mom." As Regina watched Sky and Elena leave the cafe hand in hand, she felt something shift inside her. This wasn't just her story anymore. It was their collective story. Women who'd been devalued, discarded, and were now reclaiming their narratives. 2 weeks later, When Love Wasn't Enough was officially released on all streaming platforms. Regina had recorded it in a professional studio with full production, and the result was stunning. The song maintained its raw emotional power while having the polish of a mainstream release. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The song hit #1 on iTunes within hours. It charted on Billboard. It was played on radio stations across the country. Music critics called it the most authentic breakout single in years and a masterclass in turning pain into art. But more importantly, the song became an anthem. Women shared it on social media with their own stories of abandonment and survival. Single mothers played it while working multiple jobs to support their children. Survivors of all kinds of betrayal found comfort in Regina's voice, telling them they weren't alone. The day after the song's release, Beauty's lawyers made their move. They held a press conference announcing that Jody Marshall's NDA with Sky Martinez was being challenged in court on the grounds that it covered up a pattern of abandoning children. Sky stood at that press conference, her hand trembling as she read a prepared statement, with Regina standing beside her in solidarity. "My name is Sky Martinez," Sky said into the microphones, her voice shaking but clear. "I'm the mother of Elena Martinez, who is 3 years old. Elena's father is Jody Marshall, who has never met her, never acknowledged her, and has spent 3 years paying me to stay silent about her existence. Today, that silence ends." The press went wild. Questions shouted from every direction, cameras flashing. This was the final nail in Jody's carefully constructed coffin of lies. Regina stepped up to the microphone next. "I'm Regina Parker. I'm currently pregnant with Jody Marshall's second child. Unlike Sky, I never signed an NDA, which is why I could sing about my experience at his wedding. But Sky deserves the same freedom to tell her truth. Elena deserves to have her existence acknowledged, and any other women Jody might target in the future deserve to know his pattern of behavior." The story exploded across every news outlet. Within 24 hours, it had become a national conversation about wealthy men who abandon their children, about NDAs being used to cover up patterns of behavior, about the double standard that celebrates male success while ignoring male responsibility. Marshall Tech's stock price plummeted. Major clients terminated contracts. Jody's business partners publicly distanced themselves from him. His face appeared on magazine covers, but now the headlines read, "Tech Titans Trail of Abandoned Children and the Real Cost of Success Without Character." Jody tried to fight back. He released a statement through his lawyer claiming he was being unfairly targeted, that these were private matters being exploited for public attention, that he'd always fulfilled his financial obligations. But nobody was listening to his excuses anymore. The pattern was too clear, too damning, too documented. 3 days after the press conference, Regina received an unexpected visit at her apartment. She opened the door to find Jody standing there, and she almost slammed it in his face. But something about his appearance stopped her. He looked terrible, unshaven, hollow-eyed, his expensive clothes wrinkled. He looked like a man who'd been broken. "What do you want?" Regina asked, keeping the door mostly closed. "To apologize," Jody said, and his voice cracked. "Regina, I need to apologize." 4 months too late," Regina said coldly. "I don't need your apology now." "I know," Jody said, and tears were actually running down his face. Regina had never seen him cry before. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need to say this anyway. What I did to you, to Sky, to my daughters, it's unforgivable. I was so focused on my image, my success, my rise to the top that I forgot to be a human being. I treated people like obstacles or assets instead of like people who mattered." Regina studied him, trying to determine if this was genuine remorse or just another manipulation. "Why now, Jody? Because you lost your company? Because your reputation is destroyed? Or because you actually care?" "All of it," Jody admitted. "I've been in therapy every day for the past week. My therapist says I'm a narcissist, that I've spent my whole life viewing people as tools to advance my agenda. I'm trying to understand why I became this person, how to change, how to be better." "That's great for you," Regina said, unmoved. "But therapy doesn't undo what you did. It doesn't give our baby back a father who wanted them from the beginning. It doesn't give Elena back 3 years of having a dad. Your apology doesn't fix anything." "I know," Jody said, wiping his eyes. "I know it doesn't. But Regina, I want to be in my children's lives. I want to meet Elena. I want to be there when our baby is born. I want to try to be the father I should have been from the start." Regina felt her protective instincts surge. You don't get to waltz back in because you're finally facing consequences. That's not how this works. You don't get to abandon us when it's inconvenient and come back when you're ready. Then tell me what I need to do, Jody pleaded. What do I need to do to earn the right to know my children? Regina thought about this carefully. She thought about her own father, Marcus, who'd called seeking the same thing. She thought about Sky and Elena, about the baby growing inside her, about breaking cycles of abandonment. "First, you drop all legal opposition to breaking Sky's NDA," Regina said firmly. "You publicly acknowledge Elena as your daughter. You establish legal paternity, set up proper child support, and create a trust fund for her future." Jody nodded. "Done. What else?" "Second, you continue therapy. Long term, not just until this blows over. You actually do the work of becoming a better person. Not because you want to rehabilitate your image, but because you genuinely want to change." "I will," Jody said. "I promise." "Third," Regina continued, her voice getting harder, "you understand that you don't get to be dad right away. You're going to have to earn that title. You'll be Jody to these kids for a long time, maybe forever. You'll show up consistently. You'll prove you're reliable. And maybe years from now, they'll choose to call you their father. But that's their choice, not yours." Jody's face crumpled, but he nodded. "I understand." "And finally," Regina said, "you apologize to Sky. You look her in the eyes and you tell her you're sorry for what you put her through. She deserves that more than anyone." "I'll do it," Jody said. "I'll do all of it. Just, please, give me a chance to try to make this right." Regina looked at this broken man standing in her doorway, and she felt something unexpected. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the possibility of it someday. Maybe. "I'll think about it," Regina said. "That's all I can promise right now." After Jody left, Regina called Sky and told her about the conversation. Sky was skeptical, as she had every right to be. People say they want to change all the time. The question is whether they follow through. I know, Regina agreed. We'll see if his actions match his words. 2 weeks later, Regina went into labor at 37 weeks. Kim rushed her to the hospital, calling Diane and Diana and Jack and everyone in Regina's growing support system. The labor was long and difficult, 16 hours of pain and exhaustion. But finally, a baby's cry filled the delivery room. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, placing the tiny, perfect baby on Regina's chest. Regina looked down at her daughter, and felt overwhelming love crash over her like a wave. The baby had Jody's hazel eyes, but Regina's nose and mouth. She was beautiful, perfect, absolutely worth everything Regina had endured. "Hi, baby girl," Regina whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, my beautiful girl. I'm your mama. I've been waiting to meet you." "Have you chosen a name?" the nurse asked gently. Regina had thought about this for months. She'd considered names that meant strength, names that honored her mother, names that reflected hope and new beginnings. But in this moment, holding her daughter, only one name felt right. "Grace," Regina said. "Her name is Grace, because that's what she represents. Grace after suffering, grace after betrayal, grace that transforms everything." Kim, standing beside the hospital bed with tears running down her face, said, "It's perfect. She's perfect. You're perfect." As Regina held Grace and marveled at her tiny fingers and perfect features, she thought about everything that had led to this moment. The heartbreak, the humiliation, the viral video, the revelations about Sky and Elena, the confrontation with Jody, all of it had been necessary to bring her here, to this hospital room, to this moment, to this perfect little person who would call Regina Mama. The door opened, and Diane walked in, followed by Marcus. Regina had finally agreed to let her father meet her, to give him a chance to prove he'd changed. He stood awkwardly in the corner, looking at his daughter and granddaughter with an expression of wonder mixed with profound regret. "She's beautiful," Marcus said quietly, "just like you were when you were born." "You don't remember me being born," Regina said, but without rancor. "You left when I was 3. I was there at your birth," Marcus said. "I held you. I counted your fingers and toes. I promised to always protect you. Then I broke that promise. But Regina, looking at you now with your daughter, I see what I threw away. I see the man I should have been. I can't get back the past, but if you'll let me, I'd like to try to be part of your future." Regina looked at her mother, who nodded encouragingly. Then she looked down at Grace, who gazed up at her with those hazel eyes that came from a father who'd abandoned her. "You can stay," Regina said finally to Marcus. "You can meet your granddaughter. But Marcus, if you leave again, if you break another promise, I will never forgive you. Grace deserves people in her life who show up consistently." "I'll show up," Marcus promised, his voice thick with emotion. "Every day if you'll let me. I swear on everything I have." As Regina's family gathered around her hospital bed, her mother, her best friend, her manager Diana, her lawyer Jack, and tentatively her father, she realized something important. This was what family looked like. Not perfect people who never made mistakes, but imperfect people who kept showing up, who kept trying, who chose love over comfort and truth over lies. The story that had started with betrayal and abandonment was ending with grace and redemption. Not for Jody, who still had years of work to do to prove he'd changed, but for Regina, who'd transformed her pain into power, her humiliation into healing, her suffering into song. Grace yawned and snuggled closer to Regina's chest, and Regina whispered, "Welcome to the world, baby girl. Your story is just beginning, and I promise you, it's going to be beautiful." 6 months after Grace was born, Regina sat in a television studio preparing for an interview on The Morning Show, one of the most watched programs in America. She'd done dozens of interviews since the wedding incident, but this one felt different. This was her opportunity to close one chapter of her life and announce the beginning of the next. Grace slept peacefully in a carrier beside Regina's chair, her tiny fist curled near her mouth. At 6 months old, she was already showing signs of having Regina's temperament: calm, observant, and occasionally stubborn. Regina looked at her daughter and felt that familiar surge of fierce, protective love. 2 minutes to air, a production assistant called out. Diana, who'd become more than just Regina's manager over the past months, squeezed her shoulder supportively. "You've got this. Just speak from your heart like you always do." The host, Sarah Mitchell, was a respected journalist, known for asking tough but fair questions. She settled into her chair across from Regina and offered a warm smile. "Thank you for being here, Regina. I know it's been quite a journey since that wedding video went viral." "That's an understatement," Regina said with a slight laugh. The cameras started rolling, and Sarah began the interview. "Regina Parker, it's been nearly 10 months since you sang 'When Love Wasn't Enough' at your ex-boyfriend's wedding, exposing his betrayal in front of 300 witnesses and creating one of the most viral moments of the year. How has your life changed?" Regina took a breath and looked directly at the camera, at the millions of people watching. "In every way imaginable. 10 months ago, I was struggling to pay rent, working multiple small gigs and trying to figure out how I'd survive as a single mother. Today, I have financial stability, a music career, and most importantly, I have Grace." She gestured to her sleeping daughter. "She's changed everything for me. Your song has been streamed over 200 million times globally," Sarah continued. "It's been called an anthem for abandoned women everywhere. Did you ever imagine it would have this kind of impact?" "Never," Regina said honestly. "I wrote that song for myself, as a way to process my pain. I never expected it to become something so much bigger. But I've received thousands of messages from women and men who've been abandoned or betrayed, telling me the song helped them find their voice or leave toxic relationships. That's been the most meaningful part of all of this." Sarah leaned forward. "Let's talk about what happened after the wedding. You and Sky Martinez came forward together about Jody Marshall's pattern of abandoning children. That was incredibly brave. Where does that situation stand now?" Regina had prepared for this question. Sky's NDA was successfully invalidated by the court. She's free to tell her story now. Jody has acknowledged paternity of both Elena and Grace, and he's paying child support for both girls. He's also in court-mandated therapy as part of the settlement. "Has he met his daughters?" Sarah asked carefully. "He's met Elena twice under supervised visitation," Regina said. "Sky is being very careful about how she introduces him into Elena's life. As for Grace, we've had some limited contact. Jody has visited a few times, always with my mother or Kim present. But Sarah, I want to be clear. He doesn't get to be dad just because he's biologically her father. He has to earn that role through consistency, reliability, and genuine change over time." "That's a very mature approach," Sarah observed. "Have you forgiven him for what he did to you?" Regina thought carefully about her answer. This was the question everyone wanted answered. Forgiveness is complicated. Some days I think I have forgiven him, in the sense that I'm no longer angry and I don't wish him harm. Other days, I remember the pain of being abandoned while pregnant, and forgiveness feels impossible. What I can say is that I've let go of the need for him to suffer. His consequences were natural results of his own choices. My job isn't to punish him. It's to protect Grace and teach her that her value doesn't depend on whether her father chooses to be present. Speaking of Grace, Sarah said, glancing at the sleeping baby with a smile, you've become a prominent advocate for single mothers and children's rights. Tell us about the foundation you've started. This was the part of the interview Regina had been most excited about. I started the Grace Foundation 6 weeks ago with funding from the Marshall Tech Responsibility Initiative and donations that poured in after my story went viral. The foundation provides financial support, childcare assistance, and career development resources for single mothers who are trying to build better lives for their children. We've already helped over 200 families in the Chicago area. That's incredible, Sarah said. You've taken your painful experience and transformed it into something that helps thousands of people. That's always been the goal, Regina said. Pain can either destroy us or transform us. I chose transformation. Sarah shifted gears. Now let's talk about your music career. When Love Wasn't Enough was just the beginning. You've released 3 more singles, all of which have charted. You're working on a full album, and I understand you have a concert tour planned for next year? Regina couldn't hide her excitement. Yes, the Enough Tour starts next spring. 20 cities across North America. All proceeds will go to the Grace Foundation and other charities supporting single mothers. I'm calling it Enough, because that's the message I want every person who attends to receive. You are enough, exactly as you are. Before we wrap up, Sarah said, I want to ask about something that's been reported in the media. Is it true that your father, who'd been absent from your life for 25 years, has reconnected with you? Regina nodded, feeling emotional about this topic. Yes, Marcus, my father, reached out after seeing the wedding video. He said watching a man abandon his child made him confront his own abandonment of me. We're taking it slowly, rebuilding trust. He's been present for Grace, showing up consistently. He has a long way to go to repair our relationship, but he's doing the work. Do you think people can truly change? Sarah asked. Your story involves multiple men, Jody, your father Marcus, who've abandoned children and then claimed they want to do better. Are you optimistic about their ability to change? This was the heart of everything. The question that haunted Regina late at night when Grace was sleeping and she was alone with her thoughts. I believe people can change if they genuinely want to, Regina said slowly. But change requires more than words. It requires consistent action over time. It requires accountability, therapy, hard internal work. My father is doing that work. I see evidence of his change in how he shows up, how he listens, how he's trying to be present. Jody, I'm less certain about. He's going through the motions because the court required it, but I don't know if he's truly transformed internally. What would you say to other women in similar situations? Sarah asked. Women who've been abandoned by partners, who are struggling as single mothers, who feel like they're not enough? Regina looked directly into the camera, knowing this moment would be clipped and shared across social media, and she wanted every word to count. I would say this: the person who abandoned you is wrong about your value. You are not too much or not enough or from the wrong background or anything else they told you. You are exactly who you're supposed to be. Being abandoned doesn't mean you're unworthy of love. It means the person who left couldn't recognize the treasure standing right in front of them. Regina's voice grew stronger. And to the single mothers out there working multiple jobs, losing sleep, wondering if you're doing enough for your kids, you are enough. Your children don't need perfection. They need you. Your love, your presence, your resilience. You are showing them what strength looks like. And that lesson is worth more than any father who chose not to stay. Sarah had tears in her eyes. That's beautiful, Regina. Thank you for sharing your story with us today. As the interview wrapped up and the cameras stopped rolling, Sarah came over and hugged Regina. You're making a real difference. I hope you know that. Regina picked up Grace, who was just waking up, and smiled. I'm trying. That's all any of us can do. Try to leave the world a little better than we found it. Later that evening, Regina returned to the apartment she now shared just with Grace and Diane. Kim had moved in with her girlfriend 3 months ago, though they still talked daily. The new place had 2 bedrooms, a real kitchen, and windows that let in actual sunlight. It wasn't a penthouse, but it was home. Regina put Grace down in her crib and watched her daughter settle into sleep. Those hazel eyes, so much like Jody's, closed gently, and Grace's breathing evened out into the peaceful rhythm of infant sleep. Regina's phone buzzed with messages about the interview. Diana sent a thumbs-up emoji. Kim sent a string of heart emojis. Her mother sent a simple, proud of you, baby girl. Then Regina saw a message from Jody. I watched your interview. You were gracious when you could have destroyed me further. Thank you for that. And Regina, you were right about everything. I'm trying to change, but I know I have years of work ahead of me to prove it. Grace is lucky to have you as her mother. Regina stared at the message for a long time. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to maintain the walls she'd built around her heart. But another part, the part that believed in redemption and second chances, wanted to respond with something that left the door open, just a crack for the possibility of change. She typed, "Keep doing the work, Jody. Not for me, but for yourself and for our daughters. They deserve better than who you were. Show them who you can become." His response came quickly. "I will. I promise." Promises, Regina thought. So easily made, so often broken, but sometimes, occasionally, kept. Regina sat down at her keyboard, a new one, much nicer than the worn instrument she'd composed her first song on, and began playing softly, not wanting to wake Grace. She was working on a new song for her album, this one about transformation and healing, about the journey from victim to survivor to warrior. As her fingers found the melody and words began forming in her mind, Regina realized something profound. The wedding disaster that had felt like the end of her life had actually been the beginning. The humiliation had been necessary. The pain had been purposeful. Everything that had happened, the abandonment, the viral video, the public scrutiny, all of it had been preparing her for this moment, this life, this career, this purpose. Regina sang softly as she played, her voice filling the small apartment. I thought you breaking me would be the end, thought I'd never heal or love again, but here I stand with scars that taught me how to be the woman that I needed now. The song was still rough, still forming, but Regina could feel its power. This would be the title track of her album. This would be the song that defined not just her past, but her future. As Regina played into the night, composing and creating, she thought about all the people whose stories had intersected with hers. Sky Martinez, who'd finally found her voice and was now writing her own book about surviving narcissistic abuse. Beauty Chen, who'd started a nonprofit helping women leave toxic relationships. Marcus, who called every Sunday without fail to check on Grace and was slowly, painfully rebuilding trust. Even Jody, who was trying, whether successfully or not, remained to be seen, to become better. And Grace, sleeping peacefully in the next room. Grace, who would grow up knowing her mother was strong. Grace, who would never question her own value because Regina would spend every day teaching her that she was enough. Regina finished her song and closed her keyboard. Tomorrow she had a meeting with Diana about the tour. Next week, she was speaking at a single mothers conference. Next month, she was performing at a benefit for the Grace Foundation. Her life was full, purposeful, meaningful. She walked to Grace's room and looked down at her sleeping daughter one more time before bed. "Your mama did it," Regina whispered. "I turned our pain into power. I transformed betrayal into beauty. And baby girl, I'm going to make sure you grow up in a world where no one ever makes you feel like you're not enough." Grace stirred slightly, as if she'd heard, and Regina smiled. The story that had started with abandonment and heartbreak was ending, or rather, beginning anew, with hope, healing, and grace. As Regina's story spread across the world, it sparked conversations in living rooms, offices, and online forums everywhere. People debated the ethics of what she'd done. They discussed second chances and accountability. They shared their own stories of abandonment and survival. But more than anything, Regina's story became a catalyst for change. Women left toxic relationships after watching her video. Men confronted their own failures as fathers and partners. Companies revised their NDAs to prevent them from being used to cover up patterns of harm. 1 year after the wedding incident, When Love Wasn't Enough had been streamed over 500 million times globally. Regina's album, Enough, debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200. The Grace Foundation had helped over 2,000 families, and Regina Parker, the struggling singer from Southside Chicago who'd been told she wasn't good enough, had become a voice for millions of people who needed to hear that they were. But this isn't just Regina's story. It's yours too. What would you have done if you were in Regina's shoes? Would you have sung that song at Jody's wedding, exposing the truth in front of everyone? Would you have taken the safer path and protected his reputation? Would you have forgiven Marcus when he came back after 25 years? Let me know in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts because these questions matter. They reveal what we value, comfort or courage, silence or truth. If you think what Jody did was wrong, if you believe men should take responsibility for their children regardless of the mother's social status, comment "Real fathers show up" below. Because the more we speak up about accountability, the harder it becomes for people like Jody to get away with abandonment. And if Regina's story inspired you, if it gave you courage to leave a toxic situation or speak your truth or believe in your own worth, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. But here's the thing. Regina's story is powerful, but it's not unique. There are thousands of stories like hers happening right now. Women and men who've been abandoned, betrayed, told they're not enough. And every single one of those stories matters. Hit that subscribe button if you believe in stories that inspire courage, that celebrate truth-telling, that show us what strength looks like when everything falls apart. Only people who prefer comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths would refuse to join us. But you're not one of those people, are you? Because here's what I know about you. You're still here, still watching, still engaged with Regina's story. That means you care about justice. You care about truth. You care about seeing people held accountable for their actions. And the world needs more people like you. And if you think Regina's story was shocking, wait until you hear the next one. You don't want to miss it. But before you go, I want to leave you with one final thought. Regina's story teaches us something profound. Your value doesn't depend on whether someone chooses to see it. Jody couldn't recognize Regina's worth, so he walked away. But his blindness doesn't diminish her value. It only reveals his. The same is true for you. Anyone who makes you feel like you're not enough is telling you everything about themselves and nothing about you. So to everyone watching this who's ever been made to feel small, inadequate, or unworthy, you are enough. Exactly as you are. With all your flaws and imperfections and complicated history, you are enough. And if you're a parent, whether single or partnered, and you're exhausted and overwhelmed and wondering if you're doing okay, you are doing better than okay. Your children don't need perfection. They need your presence, your love, your resilience. Keep showing up, keep trying, keep believing in yourself even when it's hard. Regina's story is still being written. Grace is growing up. The foundation is helping more families. The music is reaching more people. And somewhere out there, another woman is finding the courage to leave a toxic relationship because she watched Regina sing that song and thought, if she can stand up for herself, maybe I can too. That's the power of truth-telling. That's the power of courage. That's the power of refusing to be silent when everything in you wants to stay quiet. So one more time, what would you have done in Regina's shoes? Let me know in the comments. Let's keep this conversation going because it matters. Your voice matters. Your story matters. You matter. Thank you for watching, for listening, for caring about stories that don't have easy answers. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. More importantly, take Regina's message with you into the world. You are enough. You have always been enough. And anyone who can't see that is missing out on something beautiful. Until next time, remember, the truth will set you free, but first it might destroy some carefully constructed lies. And that's okay. The truth is worth it. See you in the next story. At Virtuous Stories, we love you.